All right. Okay, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday, October 18th, regular city council meeting night. We are starting off with a 6 p.m. workshop about the capital facilities plan. So I'm going to just go ahead and immediately turn it over to Lisa Key.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. Todd, can you bring up my presentation, please?
Oh, real quick while he's doing that, just to note, Councilmember Dunn is out for family reasons, and Councilmember Solberg should be dialing in here. I see him there. Has dialed in by Zoom. We'll do the official roll call at the 7 o'clock.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about the draft 2023 through 2028 capital facilities plan. Next slide, please. And so just a process timeline for adoption of this CFP. So wanted to remind you that the 2023 projects are included in the mayor's 2023 budget, and that SEPA and hearing notices did go out yesterday on that and were posted on the website, and the draft of the plan is out on the website now. We will have our public hearing for the capital facilities plan on November 1st, with a first read of the CFP ordinance on November 15th and a second read on December 6th. If you feel the need for additional workshops, you absolutely can schedule them between now and the public hearing and even beyond. Next slide, please. So just a reminder about some of the assumptions and basically the basis of the plan. So we started out with as a base, the adopted 2022 through 2027 capital facilities plan with transportation projects as were approved in the 2023 through 2028 transportation improvement program, which, as you will recall, you have to adopt every June. And so we had made some changes both in terms of cost increases and timing in that program, and that was carried into this capital facilities plan. We also looked at future construction costs and adjusted them based upon the Mortenson Construction Cost Index. For 2023, projects were escalated at 15%. For 2024 through 2028, they were escalated at 8.5%, and that's based on a 5-year average for the Mortenson Construction Cost Index. Again, out years will adjust. I'm not sure that this is going to continue for many years to come, but we can adjust those out years as we see inflation starting to come back down. Future equipment and technology costs were adjusted based on the Bureau of Labor Consumer Price Index for Western states, which it was at 8.3% per year. And projects with grant funding do reflect the full expenditure proposed, again, because we operate on a cash basis, as Kyle so eloquently talked to you about at the last meeting. Next slide, please. So what's changed since now the last workshop? There were a few people absent, so we did have a workshop where we shared this. I'm reiterating these points, but then I've highlighted just some new ones in the draft plan. So again, Harvard Road Bridge and Kramer Overpass, the closeout was moved to 2024 based upon delays in that project. We do expect that to be completed in summer of 2023, but WashDOT takes a full year and then sometimes to close out their projects. So we won't have the final accounting for that until sometime in 2024, hopefully. Country Vista Boulevard and Appleway intersection. The design we had to bump out to 2023, and with construction in 2024, I can't have them in the same year because there is right of way to acquire. Appleway frontage improvements, we moved that the design to 2026 with construction in 2028. Again, we think that that's going to happen through a developer driven a type of improvement. But in the case that it doesn't, at some point, we are going to have to address that from a pedestrian connectivity standpoint, from a drainage standpoint, those sorts of things. Mission Avenue frontage improvements. We moved the design to 2024 to pursue safe routes to school grant funding. And stormwater master plan, because that project started so late, we had to push that, we had to defer some of it to next year. So you're seeing some of that cost roll over. Most of that is paid through a grant, however. So Sprague Avenue overlay, we moved that back to 2025 due to pavement condition. Now here's the good news. As we work on our stormwater master plan, some of the problems that we have there have to do with stormwater, and we'll be able to pay for that through our stormwater, for that portion, just the stormwater portion through our stormwater fund. Also, the Sprague Avenue, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself. An Appleway overlay. We've got the design in 2023 with construction in 2024. The reason for that is because of the condition, and also the county has just completed theirs. It's kind of a gap in the roadway that really needs to be brought up to standards. Next slide, please. So what's changed in terms of parks and public facilities? Now the highlighted ones are actually things that are going to have changed since our last workshop. So we do have the town square master plan added in 2023 and 2024 based upon the mayor's budget for 2023. We put 50,000 in 2023 with the concept that we would be leveraging the Community Engagement Commission to really work with a consultant to help scope do the scoping for the project, solicit community input, and kind of identify what the parameters of the project would be. And then in 2024, we would actually be doing the master planning that would be the basis for coming up with bid specs and design and the cost estimates, et cetera. And so, so that's in the new draft, as well as, yes, I did correct the error in the adopted GMP for Trailhead. Oops. And also, we did add the expanded City Hall meeting room with a design in 2024 and construction in 2025. Now, this room, just so you know, is about 2,000 square feet. So I started looking at what would it be to double it. I ended up, given the cost estimates, I ended up scaling it back to 1,500 square feet based upon a construction cost of $350 per square foot. And that's for both design and construction, and then with cost escalation, et cetera. So that's again, maybe if we see the inflation calm down, we may be able to revisit kind of expanding that to a full doubling of this room, which I think would be ideal, but it was, the price tag was pretty high for 1,500 square feet. And it didn't seem like, just so you know, I also looked at 1,000 square feet, which was closer to the number that Mayor Pro Tem had suggested. Unfortunately, if we're at 2,000 square feet right now, it just doesn't make any sense to just go 1,000 more. The cost benefit doesn't seem to be there for that little of an expansion. Other things, again, you saw these last time, Trailhead driving range, design and bid this. We're looking to design and bid that this fall with construction in the spring, and we will be coming back to talk to you a little bit about what the scope of that looks like before we go out for the RFQ. The Public Works Yard, based upon award of contract, with the 75% of cost deferred to 2023, the building's not going to get delivered until January. So we'll get some site work done this year, but the buildings, actually, you're not going to see that coming up until 2023. Rocky Hill Shade Structure, again, we updated the cost based upon a little bit of additional research. That's that $20,000 that was in the last year's CFP had been in there for as long as I've been with the city. The library upgrade, we've got, assumes that we're going to do design in 2023 with TIs phased over 2 years, and maintenance projects are based on asset management software fully loaded to include labor and inflation. And for details on that, I'm going to have to defer your questions to Jen Camp and Trevor Reagan. Next slide, please. There's a couple, we did have some items in the equipment that were incorrectly noted. So the 12M grader and the 926M loader, those are 3-year leases. We assumed that the lease would renew every 3 years, and so we escalated the cost 3 years out, assumed it to be constant for 3 years, and then we assumed a lease again in the following years. The backhoe, on the other hand, is an annual lease renewal, so you see that cost escalating every year. And then some other changes that we had since the last CFP, PEBS is deferring a vehicle from 2022 to 2023. And Parks is going to also be purchasing 2 Ford Escapes, and we're going to be giving them our 2 half-ton pickup trucks, since we feel like that's a more cost-effective way than having them buy new trucks. And those are 2016 and 2018 trucks with very low mileage. The maintenance equipment was it was included as identified by operations and maintenance staff, and technology was identified by Todd and Kyle. Next slide, please. So our unfunded projects list has changed slightly since the last time you saw this because we've moved the Trailhead Master Plan into a funded projects list. Next slide, please. And now for the prioritization matrix. Can you go to the next slide, please, Todd? So here's a heat map of for the council's combined prioritization for facilities. And I will say that I only had 4 council members respond, so it's not a complete list. And so I'm not sure how meaningful this exercise is yet, but again, Trailhead Driving Range and library facility upgrades were the 2 highest ranked facilities projects. Next slide, please. In terms of transportation, again, Liberty Lake Road slip lane is top rated, followed by Country Vista Boulevard Appleway turn lane, followed by Mission Avenue overlay, Country Vista to Moulter, and the Mission Avenue overlay. Oh, I'm sorry, the Country Vista Boulevard Appleway turn lane, and then the Mission Avenue overlay from Country Vista to Moulter. I'm like, seem to be dyslexic tonight. Next slide, please. And the last was pedestrian projects, and the pedestrian crossing allocation was the highest ranked, followed by sidewalk maintenance, grinding and panel reset, and sidewalk master plan. So bottom line is that I did receive 1 council member's matrix tonight, and I will certainly add that in. Anyone else who would like to have their complete their matrix, we can add them in, and I can certainly bring that back or send it out in an email when we have a complete set. Again, it's a good exercise in kind of just understanding how these projects relate one to the other. Next slide, please. With that, I am available for your questions, comments, and feedback. I probably want to go for that.
All right, I'm make sure I have Councilmember Solberg on my screen so I can see when his hand goes up. So who would like to go first? Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Lisa, I need to apologize because I was meaning to respond to the matrix and I didn't. I slipped my mind, so I will do that tonight. Two questions for you. One, on the City Hall expansion numbers that you came up with, is that just expanding the room or is that also including any of the equipment that might be needed for that expansion of the room?
That is really just looking at the expansion of the room
Okay.
and like wall coverings, floor coverings, those sorts of things.
Okay.
But it's not, there's really no additional FF&E in there. Again, it was just, I was taking really an average construction cost for this type of construction.
Okay, so if we, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument that we had to do different cameras or lighting or whatever, specifically for the city council broadcast, that might have to be on top of that.
That would,
Okay.
that would most certainly be on top
Okay.
of that.
The second question I had, and I know this, I kind of brought this up in passing a couple of weeks ago, about the side or the lack of a sidewalk on Mission between the Rocky Hill neighborhood and the Meadowood Technology Complex, the slip of land that Huntwood owns.
Yes.
Is there any way for us to get something there and include that in this? So that the kids who are walking from school in the Rocky Hill neighborhood and on that side of Mission can get there without having to go through the field? Or do we have to wait for Huntwood to do something?
Well, no, so let me just explain that the capital facilities plan is something that you as city council can amend.
Yeah.
This is just a draft, it's just a proposal. So you could add that in there. We do own the right of way. We could do that. Again, we've talked about doing the sidewalk master plan and identifying gaps and then prioritizing them. But you, city council, have your finger on the pulse of your community. So absolutely, you can add that. If you were to add it for next year, you would also need to make that amendment in the budget.
Thank you.
Next,
Follow up
okay,
question to his,
Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
I'm sorry, yeah. So on that gap, what are you suggesting is put there it's a short-term thing, is that correct?
No, it would be a permanent thing. We have
Well,
the right of way, so we
I
could do
understand,
it.
but at some point, something will be done with that property.
Yes,
And at that point, whatever it is, we'll do the improvements, correct?
that is true also. But
So.
but
so I
what
guess my
that
que-
time frame is,
We don't know, but my question is, how much are we wanting to throw at that? So we have safe passage for.
Yeah.
Kids going to school. I mean, is it a gravel pathway like we have over in the other part of town, or is it a true concrete sidewalk? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, obviously, the true concrete sidewalk would be my choice. But I guess my question is, do we have any indication of when that Huntwood would do something with that property, or that would happen if we didn't do anything?
so we do not have any indication about anything that Huntwood plans for that property. So I can't say what
Yeah.
the time frame would be. In terms of what else might happen if you were not to amend the CFP to provide for that specific project, it would be identified in the sidewalk master plan, and we would then begin to prioritize. One of the things that we're hoping to do with that sidewalk master plan is just that, prioritize where we have gaps in our sidewalk and build those into our capital facilities plan.
And Lisa, if we would go ahead and do the full long-term improvement, the full sidewalks and all of that, when that property does sell, or because they've had it for sale several times, it's currently not for sale, but say it does, or if Huntwood does something on it, would they have to reimburse the city for that improvement?
No,
Yeah, that's why we normally wait for the development to happen.
yes.
All right, next.
I have a question
Councilmember
kind of
Kurtz.
on the same topic. Is there a crosswalk to go across to the south side? At the edge of Rocky Hill in order to get over there and use the sidewalk that already exists to go to the schools?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Next. Just making sure we haven't heard, hold on, we haven't heard from Councilmember Van Orman, Spencer, or Solberg before we go to somebody a second time. Councilmember Solberg.
You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. As you probably saw in my matrix, most of my numbers reflect completing master plans before we do any more expenses. I am with Chris in terms of there needs to be a sidewalk there. However, having waited for 20 years for any semblance of a sidewalk over in the River District, and 11 of them I've lived here, let's plan it and let's just make that a high priority so that we're following. Again, I've said this for 7 years now, some sort of a master plan for transportation too, and that includes, pedestrian sidewalks and safety and the rest of it. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Orman or Spencer, anything?
Yes,
Councilmember Van Orman.
I would concur with Councilmember Solberg. Master plans are definitely important to come first, so we know where we're going. I think on my matrix, which of course I was the one who handed it in late. Much easier when you're able to figure out what the priorities are and where we have the money at.
Yeah.
I just handed out something to everybody on the front of a little survey that was conducted on the community page. That kind of coincides with what we're looking at for capital facilities plan. What's important to the public. Public safety, of course, is always number one. And road and maintenance came in at number 2. Followed by parks and recreation, library, then of course events, festivities, and it went from there. So take a look while we're discussing this and kind of keep that in mind too. This is just a fraction of the population.
Well, and remember too, that we don't know who replied to this, if they actually live in Liberty Lake or not.
Right,
That's-
and there's
that's one
only
problem.
7,000, we've got 12,000 some odd people.
Yeah,
here.
I know there's a
Crazy.
ton of people on there who don't even live in our state, so we just have to, I love the feedback. So, hopefully
And you
percentage
get
wise it
feedback
follows.
wherever you go.
Yep.
Whether it's at the grocery store or you're getting it from the community
Yeah,
engagement.
I would like to hear it from the people who are actually going to be paying the taxes.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Um,
But if you looked at the community page or the community engagement, they really weren't too far off either.
Yeah, agreed.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Agreed. All right, Councilmember Spencer. anything?
Yeah, so first question I had is, so on the proposed capital facilities plan on page 4, it says page 2 at the bottom, but it's page 4 of the document. It says maintenance projects for parks and public facilities reflect funding for specific projects identified in the asset management software with prioritized maintenance projects reflected in the 2023 budget. So my biggest question here is that line item essentially going to capture things like Trailhead? So it's my understanding that we didn't have this software 10 years ago to start planning for Trailhead. And that's why we're in a situation where we're having to go into debt for this particular project. Is that the line item that is going to encompass all of our existing facilities that will need upgrading in the future?
Absolutely. And so the library facility that we just bought, I know that Jen has talked to our asset management folks to get that added in. The new Trailhead facility will be added in. One of the things that we were able to talk about, and I want to remind this council that when we talked about the Trailhead project, we were looking at, we had done the asset management. We knew that there was a lot to be done. And if we hadn't done the new project, we still would have been going for a bond to deal with all of the deferred maintenance that had been, that hadn't been addressed just to maintain that existing facility. So, again, I mean, your point is well taken. I want to say that Jen launched this back in 2018 or 19,
That's about right.
2019, I think.
Yeah.
2019.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
19.
So fairly recent.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been that there was enough piled away over those couple of years, especially going through the pandemic and everything. One other quick question, and I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being misrepresented in these matrices. It appeared to me, looking at the transportation or the pedestrian matrix, that there were some numbers higher on some of the other council members than were even possible. And unless I was just not looking at it correctly.
No, I think that one or two council members may have freehanded on that one.
Okay, because I was gonna say on the. On the pedestrian matrix, the max you could have was 3, I believe. So anyway,
It's a fair
okay,
statement.
I just wanted to make sure that perhaps a separate matrix hadn't gone out after I had submitted mine. And
Far be it for me to correct a council member's matrix.
Now that I know we can do that.
Right. Well, and you also need to lock it down so we can't delete columns and rows.
Can we put in negative numbers?
Again, I'm just
Okay,
a
can we-
reporter.
Let's
What-
talk about that for a second. Can we talk-
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, there were.
Yes, so some of the things on there, I was like zeros across the board. It's not a priority for me at all. I'm just speaking as myself. As one of 7 here. So going through and 000 and then trying to go back and make sure I'm the one that is one more important than the other, that I got it right coming across the other way on the chart. I mean, it was a little tasking to keep it all straight. So for me, there's 9 items, 1 to 9. In order of priority. So that's how I did it. And I would ask is if I'm the only one that's stuck on dumb when it comes to the matrix the way it is right now, then so be it, I'll work it out. But is there a better way to capture what you're after?
So one of the, and that's absolutely, you absolutely can do something different. This is a tool that we introduced back in 2018 because we had so many projects and so many different priorities, things that had come from wish lists from years gone by.
Right.
And nothing ever fell off. And so I brought forward, this is a tool that I first used when I was doing a landfill siting, and we had to come up with a way to narrow down sites. And so my 26-person landfill siting committee went through this exercise to try and prioritize for a large group what was most important in terms of the values that we were going to be getting specific data on. So was environmental more important than impact on residences, or wetlands more important than flora and I don't know. I don't remember all the categories that we went through, but we had, I think, 56 categories, and we were able to narrow it down to 26 priorities. So anyhow, that being said, it's a way to deal with a multivariate kind of analysis in a simplified manner. When you've got 26 things that you're looking at, it's hard for you to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to 26. It's way easier to say, is this more important or is that more important? If you don't like the tool, we can get rid of it. That's a fine
It
answer
might
also.
just be me, that's all I'm saying.
Hey, we use sticky notes.
There was a different method
Isn't
to do the
intent-
same thing. That would
I'm
be.
sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't the
Yeah.
intent to prioritize?
Yeah.
The intent is to prioritize, and it's a tool for you as city council to have a dialogue about the different priorities and how do you kind of bring that together into maybe something that represents the will of the entire body.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Kurtz.
I think when I'm thinking about a different method, there are a few of them on there that I thought were the same.
They
And
were.
Yeah, so I would love to just exclude those, and for the ones that I don't even want at all, to
Right.
just exclude those as well, and then really focus on the ones where I like the ability to compare and contrast the individual ones against each other. But I feel like there may be a more efficient, easier something out there for us to do.
So what we did last year that, because we had all these unfunded projects that never came off. So what you decided last year was to keep a list, which are the ones you want to keep on an unfunded projects list and which are the ones that you want to get rid of. So we actually had council members identify the ones that they wanted deleted from the list of unfunded. The other thing is that there may be some that are funded that you still don't agree with. So we had people actually just drawing lines through those lines. That's okay. You end up with a 0. Your score then becomes a 0 for those. And so that's a fine way to do it also. And I can send out a new, if you wanted to do something like that with this first round, just delete the rows that you don't even, rows and columns you don't even want to. Yes, there were 2 that were duplicated.
No, that's not what I was gonna say. I just caution about taking things off the list because as we've talked about in the past, the capital facilities plan acts a bit like a wish list. Even if we have things on there that are unfunded, if for some reason during the next year, somebody puts out some weird grant that will fund, a dog water park, hey, we've got that on our list. We can apply for the grant. But if the money's there and it's not on the list, we can't. So I do caution people on taking things off that list.
I
Go ahead,
think that's where
Councilmember
our
Curtis.
And I think that maybe there's some other things that we should be talking about that could be added to the list.
Yeah.
That we know we're not funding them, but if the grant opportunities
Mhm.
came up, like you talked about the dog park.
Yep.
I see the aquatic center under, so just things that are on here that we don't have the bandwidth for,
Mhm.
the energy for, but again, if a grant opportunity or donation were to come in,
Yep.
we want to be able to capitalize on that. And I don't know. For the capital facilities plan, but I don't know if we did that at that meeting. Maybe that might be another exercise to do before we finalize the plan is what from this or from our engagement with the
Mhm.
community, the information from the farmer's market can we add to this list to make
Yeah.
it more relevant and just more
Yeah.
relevant.
For example, the pool got taken off. To me, we hear all the time that people want a pool. Let's add it back to the list as a wish. And if somehow somebody wants to donate several $1 million in operating costs for it, then we'll go for it. But if not, we can just leave it as a wish.
And again, we have a draft plan at this point because I had to get my noticing out and whatnot. But you as a body can amend that. You can amend both the funded part and the unfunded part. And I think that is the beauty of this exercise is that as things change, as we become aware of needs and wants within our community, you as a city council can update this document every year. It's not like you're waiting until the comp plan is updated, which is not too many years out now, but it keeps it really much more living. So yes, please. But I need your input to be able to do that.
How do you
I
want
think
our input?
Councilmember Foyer, Mayor Pro Tem was next, then we'll go back to Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess my interpretation of the purpose of our unfunded projects tab was for those items. We don't have the monies for them, but we want to keep them on our capital, because it is technically part of our capital facilities plan. So it's on the plan if something arises. So I thought that was the purpose of that. Yeah, however you want to vote or however you want to get feedback from council. And for me, I did exactly what you just said earlier.
Okay.
I just got rid of the ones that were a 0 for me, and then that left me 9 to play with. Or it left me whatever to play with in that chart. It was much easier to compare them, because I took off the zeros. That was just me personally. Anyways, can I go to my questions?
Well, let's jump back to Councilmember
No, that's
Cargill. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Thank you. So I noticed, speaking about unfunded projects, we have the River District Community Messaging Board on here. But yet in our budget, we have a community messaging fund. So
I'm going to say that my understanding of community messaging fund is more funding for the new position that we have for community engagement. And pushing messages out. Is that not
I
so?
don't-
Well, as I read the fund's use notes here, it says the fund was created, I don't know when it was created, but to construct 2 messaging signs in the city. The first was built in 2017. The location for the other has not been determined.
Right, and Kyle just popped in, and the conversations we've had, you know, we have had conversations with the school district. They have messaging boards for both of their elementary schools, the high school and at Selkirk. And they have said multiple times that they're willing to partner with us on sharing some community messaging. So if we have that, and if they're still willing to play ball, why spend another $80,000 on a separate messaging board is
No,
my,
I understand that. I guess my question is, if we have a fund for it, it shouldn't be on our unfunded, maybe.
I was
Yeah.
not aware we had a fund for it.
I wasn't either until community
Yeah,
messaging.
it was started quite a ways ago when we put the one at Trailhead.
So just something that I'm just curious. I mean, really, we have funding for it, so.
But
But it's
then
not,
again, you know,
but
you
it's not
guys-
necessarily funded in the 6 years. But there is funding in the budget as a dedicated fund, but it's not necessarily,
Allocated.
it's
For-
not,
So it's not debt allocated for the River District Community Messaging Board. Because we haven't decided on where it's gonna go.
Yep, if we're even gonna do
Okay,
it all, and
that's
that's the
fair.
discussion you guys need to have.
So there is a connection between those two. We haven't given ourselves a direction on how to use
Yeah,
the funds.
If
Okay,
at all, yeah.
fair enough. Then my only other question really was on the PF 12. And it's the, excuse me. Maintenance for the library building and police station improvements, 341,000. Curious
Yes.
what that is doing for us.
so it's for lighting and windows, and regardless of the fact that we may be moving the library to a new facility,
Mhm.
we still own that building, and this is asset management that needs to be done to maintain the value of that building. And so this is something that is due, and I think Jen can probably speak more to the specifics of it, because this has actually been on there. It was actually deferred, I believe, from this year and possibly even the year before because of COVID. Jen, can you shed some additional light on the asset management proposed for the library?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just proposed scheduled maintenance that needs to happen through the asset management software. Those windows are due and that maintenance is due. I don't have the details in front of me, but it's part of what the asset management, they've expended their life expectancy and it's time for those to be replaced. They're weepy and leaky. That's just the timeline that the asset says that we need to get them replaced is next year.
So it's all windows, basically.
Pretty much, but I again, I don't have the document in front of me, so.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Cargill.
Thanks, Mayor. Lisa, two questions. One, can you remind me when we have to have this wrapped up by, or when you need it wrapped up by?
So actually, we're gonna have the public hearing is on November 1st. We've got a first read and a second read of the ordinance. Right now scheduled for November 15th and December 6th. Doesn't really have to be, you can make changes right up until you adopt that. And the reality is that Kyle had a somewhat aggressive timeline for the budget so that if it was necessary, it could be delayed and we wouldn't actually have to do the first read and second read until the 6th and the 20th.
Okay. And then for those of us who were slackers and didn't get it done, me, do you want us to fill out the one that you sent? Or based on everyone's talk here tonight, is there gonna be a new one that's gonna be sent, and would it be better to just wait until that one is going out?
I throw that question back to you. This is your exercise. I have a feeling that those who have completed it already don't want to go through the exercise again. So in fairness to them, I'd like to just, I can send it out to you again.
No, I've got it.
But,
Yeah,
okay.
I've got it. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
And we can just take another look at the process next year. We'll put that on the list. All right, does anybody else have any other? Councilmember Curtis?
When is the appropriate time to add things to the unfunded list? Is that like at one of these sessions or
You
when?
could do it at any time. You could do it now. You could do it at another session. It's
Okay.
just because it's now a draft, it takes a motion in a second. And a vote of the council, but we can make any amendments that you want at any time.
Okay. Could I make a motion?
Sure, go ahead.
Could I make a motion that we add a community pool, not an aquatic center, because that sounds bigger, a community pool to the capital facilities plan?
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Van Orman. All right, so since we're trying to use our iLegislate tonight, so Kelsey noted the first and the second, so let's try to do the vote on iLegislate if we can. Oh, and Councilmember Solberg, you'll have to let Kelsey just because I don't think you can get into iLegislate from where you are. So we'll go ahead and take a vote. Are you ready for that, Kelsey?
And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't have my legislative.
Oh,
I have
that's
some
right,
technology
okay.
issues.
Well, and if you don't have it, then Kelsey can hopefully get those entered. All right, so the motion is to add a community pool to the unfunded list on the CFP. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Those in favor
Hold on.
say, what?
Discussion, point of
Oh,
order.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Just
I
getting ahead of
didn't hear
myself.
it to the unfunded list. I heard the CFP.
The under-
Unfunded.
Yeah.
To the wish list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I skipped ahead, my
Yeah.
bad. Any other discussion on this? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor of adding community pool to the unfunded list, please vote in iLegislate, and we will take Councilmember Kurtz's vote,
Aye.
and Councilmember Solberg is an aye as well. So we'll get those tallied.
Voted once.
Okay, they're coming.
Sorry, I didn't know we were doing this tonight.
So for the audience, bear with us. We're trying to get back into using our iLegislate voting module here. I'm still missing a couple. There's one. We're looking for one more.
Just put me down for a yes.
All right, looks like we have 6 in favor. Any opposed? Not seeing any. Motion passes 6-0. So we will add the unfunded CFP list community pool. Thank you for that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
In the others, you've got the general fund REIT or potential funding sources. What would a potential funding source be for the pool?
That's why we're putting it on the unfunded list, but we could, it could be cash, it could be donation. There's a multitude of ways.
But yeah, general fund and REIT are kind of our stock responses on that. Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you. I'll put GF and REIT again. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, thanks. Councilmember Cargill.
Back to the question that or the discussion we were having about sidewalks. Can you provide a little more on that, Lisa, about whether your recommendation would be to wait until the sidewalk master plan on that strip and other strips that we've been talking about, or whether there would be a reason to try to do it? I mean, obviously the reason is because of the school there, but another reason that would necessitate us putting it on the plan somewhere.
So my thought would be, and the reason why we have the sidewalk master plan out where we do is because we're starting to build our GIS database for infrastructure. And the stormwater master plan is laying the foundation for that. And then we will do the pavement master plan and include in that sidewalk inventory. At that point, I think it becomes an opportunity for the community to get involved and to talk about what's important, what the priorities are, where are all the gaps, and if we invest the money here, it means that we may not necessarily have it to invest in some place that may turn out to be a higher priority for the community. So on that basis, again, I defer to your expertise with your community as to it's your decision if you want to bring it forward sooner, my recommendation would be to go through the process so that you can make sure that the limited resources are being applied in the areas that are where it's most needed.
Okay, thank you.
Right, any other comments? We're kind of running up on 6:45. If there's no more,
Just one
Oh,
comment. if I can,
absolutely, go ahead.
Mayor. Have we reached out to Huntwood to see if they have any interest in working together on that?
I'm sorry?
Have we reached out to Huntwood to see if they have any interest in addressing that frontage now?
I could certainly ask that question. I'd be happy to reach out to Brandon.
You'd be maybe surprised what the answer is for all we know. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll go ahead and take a break until 7 o'clock. We will come back for our regular meetings, and I'm going to hit those of you up in the audience who are here for the Girl Scouts so I can get names and troop numbers. So for the audience, we will be back at 7 p.m.
You ready?
Okay, all right. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry, I'm just getting some notes here for our guests for their Pledge of Allegiance. So welcome to the Liberty Lake City Council meeting. This is our regular meeting. It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. We are both in person in City Hall and holding a remote component via Zoom. So we will just a little bit of order of business. We are going to start with the invocation, and normally we go right into the Pledge of Allegiance, but we're going to take a minute or two to bring a whole bunch of Girl Scouts in. We have a proclamation for the International Day of the Girls, so they'll come in, I'll introduce them, and they're going to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have a quick photo op with them too when we're done. So we'll go ahead and start with the invocation given by Councilmember Chris Cargill, and then we'll go in and bring the girls on in.
Our Heavenly Father, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening as a community to consider the top issues of our community and to be able to advance good ideas and work in a collaborative way. We appreciate your blessings on our city, on our state, and on our country, and ask that you look after those serving in harm's way and those helping protect others. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, bring in the Girl Scouts. Don't be shy. If you guys just want to line up along this table here, because the flag's in the corner. And then I'll introduce everybody.
So I'll just make a comment. We've done it. We're going to do about a dozen of these across the area. In fact, tonight we've done 6 in the last 90 minutes across Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho. It's been awesome. But council, we've never had this many girls in one place, so they love you. So thank you, families, for bringing them out.
Let you introduce yourself while you're here. Thank you.
I'm Brian. I'm the CEO of this Council of Distinction. So back over to you, Mayor.
All right, so let me pull this out. So you guys can hear me. All right, so raise your hand as I call your name. Ariana. Welcome. Lana. Vanessa. Lily. Melody. Laura. Leora. Tuesday. Sophia. Coraline. Kaylee. Amina. Alicia. Ellie, Ella, and Olivia. Did I get everybody? All right, raise your hand if I didn't. No, okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and have you guys start us off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I don't know who's starting you guys off, but it's yours. Awesome job. You guys give us the honor of having your picture taken with us. For this, have taken with you actually. So if you guys want to stand maybe in front of this table and Councilman Wood, you can stand behind the table. Where are we going? Come on over here. You guys can kind of switch in and we can switch in.
Ladies, if you could just kneel down. Come on, just you just kneel down. There you go. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go.
Oh, perfect. Ready? Okay, thanks, ladies. We have a proclamation not too much farther in the agenda, so you guys can stay for that.
Yeah, we'll just wait out there and then we'll just call back in if that's
You
okay.
guys want to sit on the floor and we will sit in. It's not gonna take us long.
Okay, that's fine. Girls, just stay on the seat. Have a seat.
Long ago, we used to have the cake kids come in and join us. in the meetings, so they would sit right there on the floor. Okay. All right, with that, and thank you, ladies, for taking us through our Pledge of Allegiance. It kind of reminds us a little bit of what it's all about, have those young voices and just remember why we're here. We'll go ahead and do a roll call. If I can find my list. Here we go. Councilmember Cargill,
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz,
Present.
Councilmember Van Orman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Foliar,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer,
Present.
Councilmember Solberg. I think I heard him squeak out of here. He's on Zoom. And Councilmember Dunn is out for family reasons. Do I have a motion and a second to excuse him?
I motion to excuse Councilmember Dunn.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Councilmember Spencer and a second by Councilmember Cargill. Anybody comments or questions? Okay, if not, all those in favor of excusing Councilmember Dunn, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, Councilmember Dunn is excused 6-0. All right, we'll do an agenda approval.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two agenda amendments to make for council's consideration. The first one, can I just make it one motion for both
Yes.
items? Thank you. So the motion is going to consist of, the first amendment is an amendment to the October 4th meeting minutes to include Spokane Valley Fire Department, Brian Asmus, Spokane Valley Fire Department Commissioner, provided an update on October 1st open house, SVFD's budget process, and a clean audit report for 2021. That's part one. Part two is going to be an amendment to item 19 to include an executive session per RCW 42.30.110(1)(I).
All right, do we have was that a motion, sir?
Yes.
Do we have a
Second.
second to the motion? Motion is seconded by Councilmember Spencer. Any questions? Comments? All right, not seeing or hearing any. All in favor of approving the amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We're supposed to be voting.
These quick ones, Kelsey, we good doing this?
Do
Right.
the next. Do the
Yeah, the next one we
Next one,
will.
okay.
Let's just get through this one. All right, so
So I'll
motion passes to approve the amendments 6-0.
at that point, I'll make an a motion to approve the amended agenda as discussed.
Right, we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Cargill. And so if you guys would please, if you see up here, you'll see everybody's going to be voting on the screen up here. Well, most people, we've got a couple people aren't on, so you can see the yeses and the nos pop up. Let's go ahead and vote on approving the agenda. Maybe. Yeah.
Yay for Councilmember Kurtz.
3, 4, 5, we're missing one. Oh, there. Yep, there we go. All right, we have 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Motion passes 6-0. All right, so we'll do a quick introduction of citizen comments. So for those of you in the audience who would like to make a citizen comment, once again, there are these half sheets on the table by the door. If you'd like to make a comment in person, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Comment on anything you like, and just remember you got 3 minutes. It's not a back and forth, but if there's an action or an answer that we need to get for you, we'll make sure that we have your contact information so we can get that answer for you. And for those on Zoom, If you'd like to make a comment, please send a notice, a chat notice to Todd Henderson in the meeting chat, and he'll notify me. So we do have one already signed up. Tim Holman on taxes. If you can join us up here at the podium. The mic should be on for you.
Okay. Thanks for letting me come for just 3 minutes. I know that everybody understands that the mill rate is pretty much fixed, but can be changed. But the other factor is the assessment rates. I'm on fixed income from Social Security. We moved to and built in this city before it was a city in 1995. And I even worked for the city for 3 years, part-time for Jen. And in 2020, if we take $3,000 as our taxes for our property, and I know not 100% is the city, so I'm just giving you an example. In 2021, it was 10% increased assessment. Last year, it was 20%. Next year, it's 40%. When we accumulate them, I get 85% increase in 3 years in taxes. My Social Security doesn't go up that. I am going to be close next year to having close to 20% of my Social Security going to property taxes. And so what I'd like the council to look at is how do you keep the tax dollars for the people close to what it was in the previous year? Or for those that are retired and have lived in the city a certain number of years and are over a certain age, can you lock the tax in? So, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do. At some point in time, if it keeps going like this, I'm probably going to be forced to move from the home that I built and love. And I don't want that. Okay.
I appreciate you
Thank you.
coming. Tim, can we get your contact information? Oh, well, I don't, there's no phone number or something. Could you?
Oh, okay.
No, that'd be great to have that.
I did email.
Okay, either one. You can just give it to Kelsey here at the end of the
Okay.
table. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. We hear a lot of what you just expressed. Okay, anybody else here in council chambers like to make a comment? All right, not seeing any. Todd, do we have anybody from chat? All right, so now on to the announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. So this is where we have the proclamation for International Day of the Girl. Kelsey?
So the proclamation declaring October 11th, 2022 as International Day of the Girl. Whereas October 11, 2022 marks a decade since the United Nations adopted Resolution 66-170 to declare October 11 as the International Day of the Girl, to recognize girls' rights and the unique challenges girls face around the world. And whereas, as the world's premier leadership development organization for girls, Girl Scouts has emphasized public service, civic engagement, and fostering a sense of community in girls for over a century. And whereas Girl Scouts works to champion the ambitions, cultivate the talents, and develop the skills of girls to be leaders in their own world and in ours. And whereas in these incredibly challenging times, Girl Scouts provides community, consistency, and connection for girls and is a safe haven in all the uncertainty. And whereas in the face of a worldwide pandemic, Girl Scouts adapted to and overcame to continue to offer girls skill building, digital programming, and experiences, and found new ways to provide girls optimism and adventure. And whereas Girl Scouts offers 21st century programming in science, technology, engineering, and math, the outdoors, entrepreneurship, and beyond, helping girls develop invaluable life skills. And whereas the International Day of the Girl focuses attention on the need to address the challenges girls face and to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights. And whereas today, on the 10th anniversary of celebrating the specialness of girls, we are reminded more than 50 million women are Girl Scout alums as role models to the 1 million Girl Scouts. And we recognize and honor the 1.1 billion Girl Scouts across the globe who make the world a better place.
All right, before we conclude this, I will ask for a motion and a second in support of this proclamation. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Follier. Do we have a second? We have a second from Councilmember Van Orman. All in favor, please say aye or vote here on vote cast, sorry. We're looking for 6, guys. We'll see. What do you think? You think you're gonna get it? All right, 6 out of 6, motion passes 6-0. Now, therefore, we, mayor and council members of the city of Liberty Lake, do hereby proclaim October 11th, my birthday, 2022, as International Day of the Girl in the city of Liberty Lake, Washington, dated this 18th day of October 2022. Congratulations.
Mayor, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, city council members. Thank you, Mayor, for this very, very much. It's very special. Just a couple notes. First of all, I hope you feel awesome about, again, my name is Brian Newberry. I'm the CEO of this great council and also an Air Force veteran. And I just think, I hope you're just so proud hearing how loud that Pledge of Allegiance was. Girls, this proclamation was for you. And this community shouts you out because that all makes us feel better about our country. That was incredible on that. Any town called Liberty Lake, I'm here anytime you want us. I think that this just speaks volumes of how many girls you have here coming. It has been the best year ever for us. We've actually eclipsed our pandemic membership losses. I've got a staff member right behind me, Beth Latner. Her and her team did an incredible 14% membership growth. We're actually back to our 2014 membership numbers, which there's no other council in America that can say that. There's 110 out there, and this council is leading the way in membership. We also had our million cookie sale last year. So every city council member is going to get their VIP patches next year. Please go find these girls. They want your VIP patches. But most importantly, you all are doing so much out here. We are doing so much where we're at. Together, we make the world a better place. I came out with a new patch on Friday that says these girls make the world a better place. So we're going to go outside so we don't disrupt any more of the meeting. I'm going to hand them out. But let me just say, that was really special of you, Mayor, first to meet with my girls during the pandemic and help them with their democracy badges, but B, to call out all the girls one by one. I've never seen that before. And I would just say that just reminds us that it's each of us individuals who need to work together to make the world a better place. And you Girl Scouts, you're doing that one at a time. Thank you all. Thank you, City Council, for making us better.
Thanks for coming, you guys. Maybe I'll see some of you at the Easter egg hunt next year again. Maybe we can convince some of them to run for council in about 14 years. Okay, thanks, everybody. We are on to reports and inquiries. We will start with city council. Do we have any reports from city council? Let's see. Yeah, Tom just stepped out. So
I'll just do
Councilmember Van Orman.
I'll do a quick shout out. It looks like launch into fall festivities is happening full-fledged. So just reminding everybody to go down between 1 and 7 to Meadowwood Technology Center. They've got everything planned. It's going to be so awesome. Everything from pumpkin catapulting to carving, dancing. The bed races, of course, will be there for Lions Club. And you name it. So it'll be fun. And it sounds like the library has something going on too, 2 days beforehand.
Yep, they do. They do. All right. Any other council members with any comments? No, I see a shaking of a head on Zoom. So, all right. Mayor's report real quick. I'll get the written version out at the end of this month. Meetings of notes. No, obviously we had the building breaking ceremony. A couple weeks ago, we got to throw the sledgehammers at the front of the Trailhead building. Very satisfying, though I wasn't quite strong enough to make even a dent in that building, but it was still fun to try. And as you've seen, probably some of the videos and the photography of the building coming down. So exciting. Looking forward to it starting to come back up. I did have the pleasure of attending the I had it down on my calendar as a gala, but the Spokane Valley Performing Arts Center had a fundraiser, an event on the on the 7th. And it was a Patsy Cline theme. So the dress was cowboy casual, which was really refreshing. I didn't have to go home and get cleaned up and find a dress to wear. But it's really interesting seeing how that project has progressed. It's going to be a great thing for our region for economic development. They've already raised $22 million. They're about halfway to their goal. It is a professional theater. There's going to be multiple venues within that building, and they're also going to be able to expand their classes and their camps for kids. So 2024, I believe, is what they're targeting for the opening. So just keep an eye on that. Let's see here real quick. What else? The SRTC meeting, board of directors, was a pretty short one last week, but afterwards, and we had the meeting at the Hive. If you haven't been there, it's a branch of the Spokane Library. It's on Sprague. And it's a mostly maker space. So there's no books. There's just different spaces for people to come in and use different equipment. And there was a loom area, and there was some 3D printing. But we at that meeting, they had the celebration of the SRTC Electric Transportation Grant Project. And Melanie's here. Did you want to say anything since you're here? Because Avista did match the grant for a total of $5 million, right? Yep, so 2.5 million, and then Avista matched those dollars. So we heard a lot about this over the past year, but it was a great celebration. I got to see the 60-foot long STA bus that's all electric, and so be watching out for that. Let me see what else here. I don't want to go too long. This is the 18th. And then yesterday we had the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber Government Action Committee, and we spent the pretty much the whole time, hour and a half, going through the legislative agenda. So as soon as that's finalized, I will get that out to you guys for the upcoming session starting in January. That's all I've got. And so next we have City Administrator report. Mark.
All right, thank you, Mayor, City Council members, members of the audience. We've got a pretty full report this evening, so I'm going to try to get through it as efficiently as we can. Starting with events and reminders, we have several of these that have shown up on several prior reports. And so just a quick mention, you received an email about the AWC Cities on Tap. Still plenty of time to let us know if you want to get registered for that. But these top 3 are going to happen between now and the next time we meet. And then the new one on there is the Leaf and Beach 2022. And when Bill was here last meeting, he mentioned this. Bill's here again, he may cover it again, but this is just the annual leaf drop off at the Sewer and Water District site out off of Harvard. And that is going to occur for the entire month of November. And so with that, we're going to go into the other items on the report, starting with a quarterly donation update, and I'll ask Kelsey to provide that for you.
Thank you, Mark. Mayor and council, I'll keep this short and sweet. Also, I've just listed here and provided you the spreadsheet for all donations received since my last update at the end of June. So just for on there, I will note that one of those will be coming as an action item at the 11/1 meeting for your guys' approval.
Great.
Thanks, Kelsey. And so what I'm predicting to be the second to the last road projects update of the year, I'll ask David to log in or come online and provide that for you. David?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, citizens of Liberty Lake. This is my city engineer's report for tonight. Can you guys all hear me?
We can. Thanks, David.
Very good. Okay, next slide, please. So as you all know, the Signal project at Country Vista Legacy Ridge has been activated right now. So please, though, be careful out there. The road crews are still doing some punch list item work. So there still is a little bit of work to be done, but most of it actually has been completed so far. Next slide, please. If you're living in the Legacy Ridge area or you travel down Kramer, you will notice that the Public Works building is, the construction has actually begun. These are 2 renderings, the top right and the bottom left, of what it will actually look like when it's completed. The bottom right is the, I guess you said the civil plans, infrastructure plans. It's just a short little summary of what's taking place over there because we've had some people actually ask questions. So this is what's going on over there on Kramer. We're building the Public Works building. As Lisa had stated before, it should be completed in the summer of 2023. Next slide, please. The Kramer Bridge project, they are working on it right now, and you can see the kind of the updated photos. Several things have been completed so far. You see the bridge approaches actually coming together. The roundabout has actually been striped and is mostly complete. The girders have been placed on the eastbound side of Highway 90. And you'll see a lot of work being done over there. So just be aware is that there might be some certain like lane closures and the like. Next slide, please. The Liberty Lake Boulevard Slip Lane project is again under design right now. We've met with the landscaping crew. We've had some discussions with the with the design team. There's a lot going on. I will be discussing this with the businesses coming this winter. So that project is moving forward. Next slide, please. And I get all the questions all the time about the Mission Avenue Improvements Project, which is quite understandable. The completion the engineering review was completed last Friday, October 14th. The remedy to engineering review findings is now under design development review. The work on this roadway will take place sometime in the second quarter of 2023. We're having the discussion with the developer and the contracting crew. So just know that it will be temporarily open, most likely sometime in the near future. So I appreciate all the questions. So please keep them coming. I want to be as open as possible with the citizens. Next slide, please. Again, our construction areas are closed, so please be aware, don't ride your bikes through them, don't walk them, please don't drive through them. We appreciate your cooperation with that. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, you can call me directly, 509-755-6730, or email me directly. If you have any questions, please let me know.
All right. Thanks, David. I know Mark and I had talked earlier about you and David Gaynor and him getting together with regards to an update that whatever update we can provide to the public on Mission to be put out on social media tomorrow. So.
And we were going to follow through and do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. If there are no other questions from council, we'll move on. If you all will remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had our winter preparations briefing. And during that time, we had talked about naming the pieces of snow removal equipment. And so we have a special guest with us tonight. I'm going to invite Trent Kosenki up to the podium with his dad, Derek. Derek's one of our street crew leads, and he's in charge of the snow removal operation. And so Trent is going to help us by drawing 4 names that will be applied to each piece of our snow removal equipment. And so these were collected at some point in the past at our Touch a Truck event. And so we've winnowed these down to 12-ish, somewhere in there. And so Trent is going to draw from among those to name our pieces of equipment. So Trent, take it away.
So this is our first loader. Reach in there.
Big boy.
This is our second loader.
McPlow.
This is our grader.
Theme 2. Theme 2.
I like that.
And this is our Freightliner truck.
Say that one again. I didn't catch the
Thing 2.
thing 2. All right.
Ice Queen.
Ice Queen. I
Yes.
love that. Great. Well, I really loved watching everybody at Touch a Truck signing the plows and putting their names in. So thanks, Trent, for being here and taking control of the mic too. Not a lot of adults do that. So thank you for doing that and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
And I forgot to mention up front, Trent is a 4th grader at Otis Orchards Elementary. So thanks,
Perfect.
Trent, for coming down and spending some time with us. And so we've got Big Boy, McPlow, Thing 2, and Ice Queen. So you're going to see these on our website and you're going to see them on the reports as they are plowing regions of the city. So look for these names.
We are also looking at getting street signs added to the plows with these names.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Thank
Love
you
it.
again.
Thanks for all you do.
All right, now we're going to pivot to our Finance Director, Kyle Dixon, who's going to provide a third quarter budget update. Kyle?
Thanks, Mark. Mayor, council, while Todd gets that queued up, you'll recognize what we have here as essentially our dashboard, our monthly dashboard. This is obviously for the month ending September month ending, which also marks the end of the third quarter. And so what we'll do as we kind of expand on our quarterly budget updates is this will be kind of the benchmark, and then we can add, and I would love to get some feedback, or if you have any questions about any of this material that you have, I'd love to hear it. But what you see here, and the first thing that kind of jumps out at you is what that current financial assessment window provides. And that gives you a snapshot of how we as staff feel the city is performing financially. And so in my time here, we haven't had any major concerns. It's always been in meeting expectations, exceeding expectations in that window, largely because our elastic and our inelastic revenues have performed as expected or better than expected. And so you've seen that hasn't changed much, certainly over the last year. And some of the reasons for that is obviously our sales tax. Our sales tax, buoys a big chunk of our general fund operations. And so some of our big expenses, Kramer, Trailhead, some of those are reimbursed by Lyft. And so those aren't true expenditures that are, hitting our general fund, and we're not recouping any funds because of that. And so as you can see, in that highlighted section under key indicators, our September 30th, 2022 general fund ending cash balance is $4 million. We started the year at $6.4 million. So obviously we have had to front a lot of expense in a very busy year for the city, but we can point to specific events that have been the reasons why we have seen that temporary decrease. And obviously, $3.3 million due from Lyft in the fourth quarter. I've had those discussions with Spokane County. That is for Kramer Overpass. And generally, they don't process reimbursements until a project has been completed. But we have gotten the green light to submit for reimbursement. So we do still anticipate that in the fourth quarter, but depending on the workload for Spokane County, we might not see that until the first quarter of 2023. We've accounted for it in both years. And so you'll see it either, probably either in December or January. And so that will obviously buoy our general fund cash balance as we head into 2023. And so as we get into some of these, charts, the revenue that you can see through the end of September, up there, I've noted that, September 30th generally matches 75% of the year to date. And so we can match that percentage with what we see in terms of revenue and expenditures down low. And so going through our general fund and our streets revenue, something that jumps out right away is property taxes are only 57% collected throughout the year. I think we have explained, and as you may or may not be aware, we get two big chunks of payments from property tax. We get one in May, we get one in November. Generally, those are about $1 million. And so that you'll see that creep up to closer to 95 to 96%, after we get that November disbursement. Sales tax is going to be over 100%. As you can see, utility tax performs pretty strong. That is a very stable source. You aren't going to get massive fluctuations because what we can see, and we've explained this a little bit, we can go through it in further detail into the utility tax discussion, is our telephone utility tax continues to decline, but we see that offset by increases in the other utility taxes, electric, gas, things of that nature. And so as you guys are aware, permits, so the planning department is inundated constantly. You know, our city's growing. We have so much activity going on. You can see at the end of the third quarter that they've already collected 130% or more of their anticipated revenue for the entire year. So obviously they're going to way outpace, you know, their budgeted marks after another incredibly busy year in 2022. Other revenue is kind of a snapshot of what state shared revenue looks like. So you have your motor vehicle fuel tax, you have liquor excise tax, you have a lot of these set asides that we get monthly disbursements from the state, and that's largely mirrored in what you can see in other revenue. And so you can see that total snapshot of 87% year to date. If I included any sort of lift reimbursement in there, that would throw these numbers off. You wouldn't get an accurate portrayal of what those revenues actually are. And so we try to back out that so we can get a feel for what those operation revenues look like rather than the one-times. And so moving down as we get into the expenses, kind of the same idea is, you know, our benchmark for the year is 75%. You know, we can see across, you know, our staff has done a great job of maintaining expenses. And so you can see that kind of reflected as where we're at the end of the third quarter. And then we do point out, and it's incumbent upon me to point out that admin and finance, you'll see it's at 79%. So we incur about 35 to 40% of our expense in the first quarter. So you have massive payments, annual subscriptions for software, and our big one is obviously our liability and property insurance. So that's in the neighborhood of 400,000 that comes out, and that's obviously a massive chunk of that piece that you see there. And so this gives you a picture. I wanted to field any questions as you guys have looked through this over the last couple months. If something doesn't make sense, if you'd like to see something different, certainly open to any sort of feedback you guys would like to see in terms of how you want these snapshots delivered to you.
Are there any questions for Kyle? Councilmember Cargill.
Just one quick question, Kyle, are we seeing any slowdown from any of these numbers because of what's happening in the economy? I mean, I know that if you go scroll back up, is it Todd who has this or you, Kyle? Yeah, that where that arrow was, can you remind us where it was the last time we did this?
Oh, so at the very top under the current financial assessment, it usually sticks right in there. And so so this is reflective at, you know, on a monthly basis, essentially. And so we're monitoring those as they come in. Some of them are quarterly payments, most of them are monthly, that we use to continually, you know, try to figure out where the city's at. And it doesn't, we're not seeing a whole lot of change because these have been steady income streams. And so, you know, as we have to prepare, you know, everybody, you know, reads the news, everybody's preparing in this uncertain economic climate for a potential downturn in activity. We haven't seen it yet, but we'll certainly budget accordingly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Solberg.
Kyle, I appreciate the snapshot. There's nothing in here that you need to explain a whole lot. I also appreciate your candor in terms of where the staff sees us going from left to right across the top. It's very helpful for me, at least, to follow this. So thank you.
All right. Any others? All right, Kyle, no more questions on this side. I think you've got the next one too.
Excellent, thank you. And so we will dive into next Tuesday. We will start really getting into the budget review process, and that starts we will touch on revenues. We'll do that a little bit later in this meeting, but once we get into that line item in the budget binders that you all have, you'll see explanations under each one of those line items for why there's an increase, why there's no change, and if anything isn't explained to, I guess, your satisfaction, or that you're just curious, you need further information on, that's when we're going to get into these meetings where you can really dive into the line item and ask any questions that may pop up as we go through. We'll start with the general fund, and then we'll go through the streets fund and go through those obviously all the other funds after that, so.
Right, so I guess really the question is, so for next Tuesday's budget workshop, what time do we want to start? 6 or 7? I'm looking for some feedback.
7 o'clock would be wonderful.
Well, how's everybody feel about 7? Good? Okay,
I'm good
Alright.
either way.
Tom? Tom, is 7 okay next week? I got a thumbs up. Okay, looks like we're starting at 7. We'll just notice it, 7 to 10, just in case. We'll try to keep it to 2 hours because 2 hours of budget kind of wears on you. But just in case we do run over, that way we don't have to have extensions. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kyle. And these next couple of items should go quickly and we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Last Thursday, 50, 60 people, including Lisa Key and myself from city staff, attended the Inland Northwest Economic Outlook. And so this is an organization that puts these on regularly. This is a macro look at the economy. You heard Kyle mention this is one of the things that we're looking at when we build forecasts and build budgets. And so just a couple of takeaways that I wanted to brief council on, just by virtue of the fact that we attended. Greater Spokane Inc. is going to put on a similar event in November, so it'll be interesting to see how those two organizations sync up when it comes to this information. But essentially, the key takeaways are that we are, as an economy, a national economy, kind of transitioning out of this low cost economic era into a higher cost economic era led primarily by labor shortages. And the one graph, and all of these presentations are available on their website at inwp.org. Anybody can go out there and pick these up and kind of look through them, is the graphic that they called the death cross. And apart from just liking saying the death cross, this graph showed the kind of historic change in the fact that for the first time in history in 2022, we've had more people turning 65 and theoretically exiting the workforce than we have people turning 18 and theoretically entering the workforce. And that trend is expected to continue for the foreseeable future. So that's what they're calling the death cross, is the crossing of those two lines. The future expected inflation measures are beginning to ease. So when they look out into the future and they say that 2% expected inflation that the Fed sets, 24 months into the future, what does that number look like? It's starting to get closer to that 2% expectation than it has been in the past. Having said that, they're expecting for the average inflation to continue, the rate to continue into 2024. So another full year plus of these above average inflation rates that we've been seeing. And of all of the presenters, and this was about a 5-hour presentation of a variety of different presenters, the consensus was that there will be a mild recession. That's the word that they used, mild. And so the severity and the duration of that depends on what actions the Fed takes, and some other things that they mentioned that have impact are obviously things like the war in Europe and the unknowns out there related to weather events and all of these other things. And so just at a macro level, condensing 5 hours of stuff down into 4 bullet points, those are what they are. But again, all of these presentations are available for anyone to go out and kind of look through and kind of formulate your own viewpoints and opinions at inwp.org. Any questions about any of that? All right. Moving on to the last item of my report, burn ban restrictions lifted. I assume everyone knows that there was a open burning and recreational fire ban that had been in place since July 22nd of 2022. The fire marshal, through the fire marshal's recommendation, we've lifted that effective on 14 October. So Friday, effectively that ban has been lifted. And so I believe that we've posted that or will post that on our social media site and other channels so that everybody's fully aware from our perspective that that's lifted. Any questions about that? Okay, so Mayor, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. All right, we will move on for further reports. Library board. Wasn't sure which one of you was going to be talking. Welcome, Tim.
There's a
Good
whole
to
bunch
see
of
you.
us here. Be careful. Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Tim Olson here on behalf of the Liberty Lake Municipal Library to give you our quarterly report. I've got good news. Todd, you can go to the next slide, please. As you can see, the differences between checkouts from 2021 to 22 are up 17.5%. Visitors in our library here in town are up 36% to 16,903. And participants, and I had to ask Jenny what this meant earlier today, that's children's, teens, adults that sign up for their summer reading program was up a staggering 28%. Next slide, Todd. The library came to you and was received ARPA dollars given to the city council to purchase laptops and hotspots for patrons. This began in May of 2022. We had 3 laptops and hot kits checked out 19 times. We've got 2 hotspots checked out 45 times. We have definitely touched the community with this program. Offering this, and we're going to seek to expand this program coming up, probably in your next budget. Next slide, Todd. We now have a study room. As suggested by our community assessment, the library created a study room. The maintenance crew painted the room from navy to blue and white with a gray shade. The room includes a study table. The table has 6 outlets, 4 USB ports, a TV for presentations, a laptop stand, and a whiteboard. This is going to support individual study sessions. Group study sessions will be up to 8 individuals, small meetings for 12 individuals, and you can also have the ability to do online interviews in this room. We invite you to come see this room when you have time. We'd love to show it off to you. Todd, next slide will show a copy of what this looks like. We brightened it up. It used to be dark blue. Next slide. The board has also updated our collection development policy update. This has been a very long process. It took us 6 months to review the policy from the February until just recently in September. We listened to feedback we received from the council, the community, the state libraries, the American Library Association, and our city attorney. Next slide, Todd. Our policy reflects the values of much larger organizations with consistent evaluations. Just to name a few are the First Amendments of the Constitution of the United States, the Library Bill of Rights, the Freedom to Read Statement, the Freedom to View Statement, and the Washington Library Association Intellectual Freedom Statement. There's no reason to go out and reinvent the wheel when we have these very, very powerful organizations that are giving us the guidance necessary. Access to minors remains unrestricted. Our collection continues to reflect a variety of inputs. I'm not going to read all these selection criteria here on the next slide, Todd, but I want to mention that not all, the last bullet point here is that in our selection process, not all this criteria needs to be met. I believe you'll all have copies of this slide. You can go through this yourself. I don't need to read it to you. Next slide, Todd. We've also updated our book reconsideration process. The board reviewed the Liberty Lake Ordinance 119-B, which is the establishment of the Liberty Lake Library, and passed by the council on January 20th of 2015. Also the board bylaws and the consulted with our city attorney. If a formal complaint is filed, the patron is going to fill out a brand new request for reconsideration form, which is much more in-depth, getting a lot more information back from the patron. That will go to the director and the collection librarian will review their request. The patron will receive a letter with their decision. If that decision is challenged, it now goes on to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will review the request. A decision will be made by the public board meeting. The patron will receive a letter with their decision, and the Board of Trustees' decision will be final. Next slide, Todd. This new form is 1.5 pages long versus I think it was more of a half a page before. And it's very thorough. We're going to determine their contact information, of course, the title of the offer, the type of material, and the required patron, and it requires the patient to read our policies and other documents. The patron is going to describe their concerns, how much of the book that they actually read, and how they found and heard about the material. You're going to just identify the specific pages of concern and what the library should do to take, and what we should do with it. and what material we should use to replace it. That's the end of my report. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm going to throw Jandy up here and some of the other board members.
Very strategic. All right, are there any questions for the board? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, I've got a question. So you mentioned in the report here that you took council feedback. Which feedback was given from the council? I'm just curious.
We just took in mind a lot of the feedback that we got during the book reconsideration discussion that we all had.
I guess I'm just curious, because I was one of the individuals that got up and spoke that night. And my biggest concern is just establishing some sort of minimum standard of decency in our community. Leaving all content unrestricted to youth, in my opinion, doesn't do that. So I'm just curious as to what conversations took place regarding that topic.
We did a lot of review of the laws, and there are several dozen pages of First Amendment court cases that don't allow restriction of access to minors. So we took that case law and determined that we weren't able to change that part of the policy.
Just one follow-up question. All the criteria that are listed, it was my understanding when I read through the document originally that only one of them has to be met out of the 9 or so listed. Is that correct, or?
Yes, not all of the criteria need be met. An example of this would be one of the super popular collections of our library is what we call we call it our gentle mystery section. So this is a super popular section of our library. People check out books from there every single day. You get a lot of book reviewers get a lot of money for reviewing James Patterson. They don't get a lot of money for reviewing gentle fiction. So if we required that all of these criteria be met, we couldn't buy those materials for our patrons at the library. And it's one of our most highest collections that check out. So it's one of those collections that we have expanded, and we wouldn't be able to provide any of those materials to our patrons if we had to require that.
And that's fine. And I don't want to monopolize the time here. I guess my biggest concern was the fact that it appeared that only one of the criteria had to be met, and one of those could just be that a patron asked for it to be included, and that could be the basis for allowing it into the library. So that was my biggest concern, because, you could have people taking advantage of that system, simply requesting material that many of us would deem inappropriate. But if that was the only criteria that had to be met, that they simply asked for it, that seems like it would not be a good policy to have.
Yeah,
our
to
library.
ease your concern, I wouldn't say I go around buying books for the library that only meet one criteria. We've expanded I'm gesturing to the presentation that's not here anymore. We expanded our number of things that we look for when we buy something. It used to be like 9, now it's like 15 or 16. It's a lot longer. I generally do find materials that meet multiple criteria. I just hesitate to require something to meet 15 criterias because we
Yeah.
wouldn't have any books.
No, and I don't
So-
think anybody's asking that it meet all 15. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Like any other policy that we take under consideration, am I correct in assuming that at some point here in the near future, we're going to get a red line version of your policy changes, and we're going to schedule a time to have a discussion about those policy changes?
No. As part of the ordinance review, the city council doesn't review policies updated by the library.
And certainly
Just
we can provide the
We,
red line.
yes, we provide you a copy with them, but it's not something that the council votes on. It's something that's voted on by the library board.
Well, you're taking action away from the council in
Uh-oh.
this presentation that I
No.
saw tonight.
No.
Let me interject here for a second. So the ordinance that's in place that established the library and the library board of trustees bestows that authority to the Board of Trustees. So from the standpoint of what the authority is for them to act, setting policies and procedures, to the extent that the council wants to make changes, it would have to redo the ordinance. So from the standpoint of the policies that are in place, if the council wants to take action on the policies, it'd have to amend the current ordinance in place. Because right now that ordinance provides the authority for the Board of Trustees to act and set those policies.
But I also believe the ordinance says that the council has final say.
The council has final
Otherwise,
authority
why
with
wouldn't
regard
it
to
come to this
budgetary
body?
issues. The council has final say certainly with regard to budgetary issues, but with regard to the policies and the authority of the Board of Trustees, that's the group that has the authority to set those policies. Now, again, council can certainly change that if they want to amend the ordinance that's in place, but the ordinance that's in place right now, that's what it provides.
Then why did we have the discussion several months ago? Because in the document, it says any, I forget the term, any, disagreements with the board of directors or the library director comes to the council. I'm pretty sure I read that.
I think there's, I don't have it in front of me right now. I think there's a distinction between what the point you're trying to make relative to authority of the Board of Trustees versus the librarian and the authority of the librarian and how that acts. Certainly with regard to the librarian, there's one aspect of what the ordinance provides. There's another portion as it relates to the Board of Trustees and what their role is relative to policymaking.
And the ordinance doesn't say that, doesn't have in it the process of challenges. It was the policy, which is what lies under the board's discretion.
And I think the other thing too is keep in mind that the policy that was in place, I will say, in my opinion, was fairly deficient in the context of how it was laid out initially and what the process would have been, especially when it went from the Board of Trustees to the council. There was really nothing that was in place in a formal scenario relative to what that policy is. And so consistent with what the authority of the Board of Trustees is under the ordinance that's in place, they went through and reevaluated that to put a new policy in place, which is, I think, what they put forth tonight.
So council has no input on the policy.
As it's currently written, the answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cargill, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I had the same question as Councilmember Foyer. I don't like being told just out of the blue that the authority is being removed, whether it be the policy or the ordinance. I understand what you're saying, Sean, about the ordinance. And if that needs to be changed, that's fine. But I think this conversation should have been had before this point of view or before this point in time, when we're now being told, never mind, you don't have any authority whatsoever, and we've decided to change the rules. Because that's kind of what it sounds like is happening, that the policy that was in place that said that the council would have the final say is being removed. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, is that accurate?
No, I would say that's not accurate. I would say that the Board of Trustees from the beginning has always had the authority to make policy.
Right,
Okay, the council in passing the original ordinance delegated that authority to the Board of Trustees to make those decisions.
right.
It was not going to get involved in making those decisions. So what the Board of Trustees is doing now is simply following what was held in that ordinance when the council at that time passed it.
But wasn't the previous policy of the board before what we're seeing tonight, that the final decision would come back to the city council?
No, so the difference is we're talking about with regard to a book issue, an individual
Right.
book issue. And what a policy that had been in place relative to reviewing a book that should or should not be in the library. That's just a policy with regard to book review.
Right,
Other policies and things like that is Board of Trustees. The way that policy was written with regard to the book was it went through the librarian stage, went to the Board of Trustees, and then the policy provided that would go to the city council.
right,
That was just one policy, but
Right.
setting that policy on how that went was because the Board of Trustees had set that policy that way.
right. So what you're saying is that the Board of Trustees is making the decision to change that policy now
Correct,
and take the decision out of the hands of the council.
correct.
No, I
Because
know there was,
in-
oh.
Because in a review of the ordinance, it was found that the council has financial oversight of the library and the library board of trustees has an oversight of the book policy. So because of what the ordinance says, it should not have gone to the council because that was not
your position to make, if that makes sense.
first policy was.
Yeah.
So it was incorrect. So we've corrected it.
Can I ask a follow-up, Sean? Are there any other parts of the city where the council does not have the authority?
Again, I don't think that's the right characterization because the council has the authority. It can change
Right.
the authority of the board of
Right.
trustees.
Is there any
if it
other
wants to.
ordinance that provides for a certain department of the city not coming back to the council?
Salary commission.
Yeah, salary commission would one, yeah, that'd be another example. And again, that's the same way. It's
Right.
passed by ordinance, delegating authority. So for example, that's a good example, Kyle, thank you.
Yeah.
Salary commission says all the council members get new increases.
Right. because
Council
that's
has
a
no
conflict
authority
of
to
interest.
change that.
Yeah, because
Right.
it's conflict, right?
But it's based upon the ordinance and statutes by the point that you delegated authority to someone to take action, a commission, board of trustees, what have you. The distinction though with this one is that the council can make a change if they want. I'm not saying you can't make a
Right,
change.
right.
I'm just saying the way the current law is written in this ordinance, it was delegated to the board of trustees to make this decision.
And we did do a review of all the other city libraries in the state of Washington to make sure that our policy was consistent with theirs. None of those other libraries have a book reconsideration policy going to the city council. So because of that, in our review of the ordinance, it was seen that our policy was incorrect.
And I will add this too, in reviewing the policy that came into place with regard to the book. It'd be my opinion on how it was written was almost as an afterthought. Where it went to the board of trustees and then it just said, go to the council. Because there was nothing else after that. It was basically just go to the council for review. There was no process. There was nothing to advise the council what to do. There wasn't anything as far as decision-making. It was almost as if it was an afterthought. Again, I don't know that. Confirming that because I wasn't here at the time, but that's the way it appeared to me. And in reviewing that policy in relation to what the ordinance had passed, that's what looked like the policy had been established. And I don't know that that was exactly what was intended, given what the ordinance reads.
Okay, thank you.
And it was made aware to me by the ALA that book challenges can go to litigation. And if the council were a part of that position, you could be up for having litigation brought against you. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Are you suggesting that we would not be liable for the board of directors? Of course we would.
I guess that's true.
Any other questions, comments? I see Councilmember Solberg's hand up.
Yeah, I want to thank the Board of Trustees for their work. I've sat in on most of their meetings. I do believe that we're following now with their changes, the ordinance that we have. It's a misrepresentation to say that the council had the final say. It never did by ordinance. If you think that it's taken some authority away from you, that's in your own mind. It's not in the ordinance right now. If you want to change the ordinance, then that's a whole nother thing. But I think that this one is very clear, and I quite frankly don't think that the council needs to be voting on the Board of Trustees policy for book reviews, for book purchases. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Spencer.
I will just comment, I agree. I don't think book reviews should be coming to the council. I think we could be spending our time doing better things as a general rule. I would say that it would be interesting. One question I had is the Board of Trustees are appointed positions or elected?
Appointed.
Appointed. So that would be my only concern as far as how that's structured. I feel like perhaps the council should be involved in some of that policy making. And so, if we have to do that through ordinance, I think that might be an appropriate conversation.
Councilmember Van Orman.
I just wanted to go ahead and say, I know what an incredible amount of work you guys do. I mean, from start to finish. And by changing some of your policies, thank you. We love to go ahead and see what those policies are, if they're in here. I was on a rush study today, so I didn't get a chance to look at them, but I probably was sitting in on that original ordinance. So we will be looking at that again. Do I want to go ahead and make policy? No, I'm so glad the Board of Trustees do that for us. But I agree, you know, if we're gonna have the end results of any type of liability, I want to re-look at it again. But thank you for all your work. Truly appreciate it.
Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Councilmember Spencer said. I think the challenge that I have is not that I want to sit up here making book policy. I don't. We have much better things to do. The challenge that I have is that the Board of Trustees is an appointed position. We're the elected body, so we're the ones who take the slings and arrows. Whereas the Board of Trustees doesn't have to do that. The Board of Trustees doesn't have to stand for an election or go out and get the support of the community in order to be sitting on this dais. So that is my concern about this, is where the final decision-making stands. Is it with the elected body or is it with the unelected body? And that's what I come back to.
It's with the unelected body appointed by the elected body.
Yep, yeah, appointed by mayor, confirmed by council, yeah. Okay, thanks, guys. But we will get a copy of, obviously, we wanted the presentation first. We'll get that out to everybody.
Yes.
Thanks. All right, Planning Commission. Richard. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, council members. I'm Richard Sadler with the Planning Commission. I just wanted to go over where we're at right now, kind of wrapping up our year of work we've been doing. We have about 5 areas that we are looking at on our annual cycle for amendments. One of them was in the building height definitions and stuff, just getting it down to what is in the International Building Code standards and not be complex like it is in our code currently. Manufactured homes, we don't have a lot of that in our community, but we have a requirement that a manufactured home, when it changes ownership or new ones are put on, that they have to include a garage. That's been considered burdensome cost for folks that are trying to get into housing and especially the manufactured home area. So we're going to make the recommendation right now. It's all of these amendments, just back up a little bit, all these amendments have gone through all our workshops. We're now going to move forward with having a public hearing and finalizing them before they come on to your docket there to vote on, and with our recommendations, of course. But we're going to take that requirement out to have carports or garages is kind of where we're at today. Then we're doing some cleanup on our comp plan maps with the annexations we did over the past year or 2 or 3 or whatever it's been since the school thing started. So we're just cleaning up there. One of the big ones probably is going to be our parking standard. I think that's going to be the difficult one. That's our last workshop. We've had quite a bit of workshops on that, and it may get a little contentious because we're trying to combine the city ordinances in our codes. We have one for River District that's different for here, and the River District was given some allowances that weren't in for this area, and we've made it where they all are going to be following essentially the traffic engineer's parking manual requirements or their recommendations of how you do parking related to businesses and what you require of that. So that may get into some contention with the public on some of those issues there. In that parking standard, we're also bringing in a WAC requirement from Washington that requires electric vehicle charging stations to be put into businesses. I think my easiest way to look at that is businesses for the charging stations are for their employees. And that's going to be a 10% requirement with another 10%, I believe it is another 10% set aside so they can add. So you'd get up to 20% total, but that's going to be any new buildings, areas where they're going to have to put in those parking station or those charging stations for electric vehicle parking for employees. So it wouldn't be for the general, like you go to Home Depot as a customer, you don't get to go, they don't have to worry about you charging your electric vehicle, but it is for their employees to charge their electric vehicles. So, and all those are, like I said, we're pretty much done with the workshop. We'll have our next meeting, we'll have our public hearing on it and go forward with it. So, any comments or questions?
How soon
Okay.
are we gonna see that, your recommendations?
So we're going to do a public hearing. And then I believe it's within the month they'll go to the council.
And then we will have public hearing, the first reading of the ordinance on December 6th.
Okay,
Thank you.
there you go.
It's pretty
Thank
much
you.
the same sequence every year. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. And we do have interview, at least one interview this week with a potential returning planning commission member, and we haven't rescheduled our other one. Our other candidate came down with the X, so we're waiting for him to get better. We'll get you filled back up. Okay, Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District, Bill. Thanks for joining us again.
Bill Genoway, Commissioner, Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District. Mayor's Council. I like the deal in the library. That was spicy. Okay, mine's not that way. So we're having the beach and leaf cleanup the whole month of November. And the only thing we would ask is that we won't monitor every load that comes in. So we hope the citizens don't bring in garbage. And so on your websites and however you communicate with the citizens, make that clear that we don't want tires and toilets and crap. So we're actually going to do some improvements on that property. We are going to, the leaf bags are already removed, and then we're going to push the leaves that are there back. So it'll be an easy access. And then we're going to grade the road, and then we're going to put some asphalt grindings down so it makes it a little easier, less messy, keep the dust down. We're going through a design right now of our district office. So we have a design team in, they're looking at increasing some space. We're getting a few new employees and we need a place for them to work. So we're looking forward to that. A couple other things over at the treatment plant, and this is kind of a, it's kind of a sticky deal because the treatment plant is there. And we're gonna put up some signage on the building, on the fences, notifying people that this is a sewer treatment plant. So Tutina is moving right up next to us. And we need them to know, and the people that buy those properties to know that on occasion, not all the time, but it's a sewage treatment plant. So I don't know if that's going to be an issue, going to be something that we really don't have a way to mitigate that problem. We'd hope that there would be a bigger buffer, but on a windy day, it's going to be that way. Building 1 at HP, not HP, it's Meadowood Technical Campus sold. So we're working with that, getting that squared away. We also got a clean audit from our audit report. And just as an interesting note, I went to the community theater the other day. They got a presentation of the Addams Family. And it is really fun. If you haven't been to the theater in Liberty Lake, you should go. Lots of kids. And these are people that don't have any real acting experience. I'll tell you, it was a really good show. Good scene, good fun. Any questions?
Councilmember Van Orman, go ahead.
Bill, thanks for being here.
Sure.
Question, you were talking about designing the district office. Is the Denny Ashlock building, does it still have a community room that's available for everyone?
No,
No, okay.
we had to move into that space because we've outgrown the facility. And I'm not sure that that will come back. So we actually split that space in half, and we use one half of it for our board meetings, and the other half is our accountant's office.
Well, it brings back a lot of memories. That's where we started the city.
I know.
Yeah.
When we've used it, a lot of HOAs have used it, different meeting groups have used it, and we've made that open for no charge, and but we just, we've run out of room. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Quick question. You were talking about the area back behind where we're gonna be dumping all the leaves and stuff.
Right.
Is there a problem with dumping there? I mean, have people thrown out garbage
Yes.
before? How serious a problem is it? And do you guys have any cameras, or is there any way to find those people if you catch them?
We don't, but that'll be, so it's not been a real problem, but it's been a problem enough that I'm mentioning it. If it gets to be a problem, because we can't staff it, we
Yeah.
don't have the people.
Right.
City of Liberty Lake used to help us when we were picking it up. And we could look at it there, but now people come in. We don't leave it open at night, obviously, but during the day they come and go. We're not there all the time. So cameras might be an issue, an option at some point. But they put them in a plastic bag, we don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
So we really have the space, and we have the access, and we have the ability to mulch that. So it's a great service for the city and the lake people. So, but we don't want it to be, we don't want people to abuse it.
Well, I will say, as the recipient of one of those phone calls about, can't they do something about that smell? They're coming,
I know.
yeah.
But
And, those
there's
are-
not a lot we can do about it, but we will sign it. We were gonna put up a lot of signs, and if they're surprised, I'm sorry.
Yep.
It's a treatment plant.
It was an interesting conversation.
Okay,
Thanks. All right, we are on to workshops. Did anybody have any need to, any additional discussion tonight on the capital facilities plan? Councilmember Cargill.
Thanks, Mayor. I just, Lisa and I had a conversation in the interim, just talking about sidewalks and the situation we discussed in the 6 o'clock meeting as well. And it occurred to me after we talked that the next sidewalk master plan is not going to be completed. Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, 2025 is what you had mentioned, or 2024? 2024. So I'm hoping that we can not only figure out at least a temporary solution for that mission area, but also mission on the other side in the river district on the south side. Is that right, Lisa? Yeah, which a lot of kids are walking over there to get to Selkirk as well. So those two in particular, I'm hoping we can figure out what to do with those before 2025, because I'm not sure that we can wait another 3 years before we get those taken care of. So thank you.
So Lisa, I know there are grants out there for safe routes to schools. If we put this on the unfunded list, would that make us eligible for applying for some of those grants?
Yes, we would have to, we would want to get the design on there though, to be competitive. We'd also have to work, there's actually quite a bit of legwork that goes into an Safe Routes to Schools grant that we'll have to do with the elementary schools to get, to kind of get the foundation for that. But again, we do have, the mission one is in there. We've identified that as we've got the design work happening. I don't have it in front of me. I believe it's in 2023 or 2024, so that we can go after that Safe Routes to School grant. That may be an option to get that, that section of sidewalk into design. So again, we can go after a Safe Routes to School grant for that.
Thank you. All right, there's no more comments on for tonight for the capital facilities plan. We'll move on to utility tax discussion, and I know Kyle's got a re-presentation for us.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. So yeah, while Todd pulls that up, this will look familiar for most of you. We broached this topic back in July. And it was discussion on, so a little bit of the history and where and Todd, we'll do the utility tax. We'll do sources of revenue at the public hearing. But for this one, we'll go ahead to do, thank you so much. So, so this is what we presented back in July for council and consideration. And so I'll go back through this and we'll kind of rehash some of those things, and then we'll have a follow-up discussion based on any anywhere the council wants to take this matter. And so a little bit of the history. So obviously, you know, revenue reductions as a result of the 08 housing collapse and subsequent economic recession. Ordinance 188 was passed in 2010, authorizing the collection of taxes on electrical, natural, and manufactured gas, telephone, cable TV, garbage, utility rates at a rate of 6% of the gross income, beginning in 2011 to avoid reduction in critical city services. Per RCW, the maximum allowable tax rate for these utilities is 6%. Collection on satellite TV and internet is not permitted. In 2011, Ordinance 188A authorized the reduction of that utility tax from 6% to 3% beginning in 2012. The 2013 annual budget reallocated utility tax revenue from the general fund to the streets fund. Prior to 2013, regular transfers from the general fund were used to fund street operations. Next slide, please, Todd. So what you see here is a snapshot of the utility tax history kind of in one spreadsheet. And so in the light blue in the top left, you can see it was initially receipted into the general fund. We would see subsequent transfers from the general fund to the streets fund to fund street operations. And as you can see, that dark blue, ever since 2013, we have earmarked utility tax to fund street operations. And as you'll see, if we review that ordinance, it is stated in there that we do want to have a periodic or annual review of utility tax and potentially reassess based on need. And so this goes through all of them. There are two additional utilities that the city does not tax that a lot of other cities do, and that is water and sewer. There is no statutory limit on those. So you'll see some cities, I sent out a rate study a little bit after our presentation on what other cities are charging. And you can see some pretty exorbitant numbers on those. It's charging 27-30% on water and sewer for a utility tax. And so what you can see here below those numbers, it's kind of our balance sheet for streets. And so you can see what it costs down there at the bottom to operate, and you can see that average difference down in the far bottom right-hand corner. So we have a surplus of, you know, roughly $200,000, and we earmarked that for a transfer to the streets capital fund that funds equipment purchases and most of the maintenance on the roadways that doesn't include capital projects you'll see on like our real estate excise tax balance sheets. And so this is kind of your like I said, snapshot of how, you know, our current system came to be and where we're at. Next slide, please, Todd. So we considered a couple options to further reduce the utility tax if council so chooses. And so 4 options are, obviously, we do nothing. We have a identified source of funds that satisfy the obligation of street operations. So maybe there isn't necessarily anything to do. Another one is potentially remove cable TV and garbage. Those are more residential, I guess, focused taxes where we could potentially ease the burden more geared toward residential activities. So you're seeing an estimated reduction of $170,000 in annual tax there. Reduce the rate across the board from 3% to 2%. That'll reduce it approximately $280,000. Or we could go kind of a half measure and we could reduce it from 3 to 2.5%. Obviously, that's a $140,000 tax reduction there. And so what you'll see is, you know, the first item to go, if we see this, so we don't have a like for like where we can reduce services based on a reduction in revenue, is we would see the streets capital fund no longer getting that annual transfer based on any direction on reduction. And that would be augmented by the general fund as the general fund is able to accommodate any transfers to the street capital fund. Next slide, please, Todd. So this is kind of going through, these are just snapshots of what we had just discussed. Is if we remove cable and garbage, we have a difference, you know, we're right at pretty much where we need to be to fund pure street operations. Next slide, please, Todd. Reduction to 2%. This is where you can see we're getting into a little bit more of a burden, and we would need a problem solving where we're going to replace that revenue from and what that would look like. It's going to come from general fund, but to what capacity and what other fallout are we going to realize by any reduction in revenue relative to street operations are we going to see? Next slide, please, Todd. At 2.5%, you're really we're right where we need to be in terms of, you know, operations matching, you know, the revenue source without any contribution to a capital fund, that being the streets capital fund. And so these are some of the options that we had discussed in terms of satisfying, you know, what we would like to review in terms of need. Do we need to change anything? Is there a I guess, is there a call for us to reduce the utility tax in any way? And that's the question that we'll pose to council. And so in the 2023 budget, we haven't planned for any reduction, but we can certainly make that accommodation if council so chooses. And so we did a couple things I'll touch on, and then I'll take questions. We did look at the potential for a car tab tax. And so we estimate about 6,500 registered vehicles. You know, if we have a $20 tab to identify, you know, to try to replace those, you're looking at about $130,000 in revenue. And that's an estimate, you know, we could do, you know, as high as 150, as low as 110 based on, you know, actuals. And we wouldn't know that until we actually saw some data after implementation. But you're still, you're not replacing the substantive portion of the utility tax in terms of what the operations covers on an annual basis. And that was pretty much it. So yeah, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, it looks like I've got Councilmember Solberg up first and then Councilmember Van Orman. You're on mute, Tom.
That's real helpful, and I appreciate you're going through it to keep it somewhat simple. We seem to have lost on our screen, however, the slides that we were talking about. So if we are going to talk about any reduction, could we kind of in concert with what Tim Holman spoke with us at the citizen comments, we had several conversations at the farmers market about this as well. A mentor of mine who some of you are very familiar with, used to be on the council, also has in the past suggested that maybe we take a look at reducing in some way some portion of those 5 funds for those that are 65 and older. And I'm not saying that because that's just me. I am on a fixed income as well. But it is, if we're going to start someplace, can we please start someplace where it's hurting people that don't have the ability to earn any more money? And then the second part, thank you for doing the work on potentially a tab tax. I don't have any problem with a tab tax if it's really a user fee, because then it's fair for everybody. And so I don't think that lowering across the board by 0.5% or an entire percent is going to help us with regard to our revenues. And personally, I'm concerned, even if we were to do something for seniors, that might impact the street funds and our ability to not have to go into the general fund for that. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Van Orman.
Thank you. I missed the first utility tax discussion. And I did go back and looked at all the conversation that was surrounding it. Let's give you a little bit of background. Yes, we kind of talked about that during the slide, but streamlined sales tax went into effect in Washington State in 2008. Even though it was adopted, it didn't actually transform until about 2009. Didn't really catch up to Liberty Lake along with everything else until about 2010. So we were looking at 20% lower sales tax. Then, of course, we had the housing, and at that time I was mayor. And we had to make a decision. 24 to 26 employees at the time, giving absolutely their best that they could do. And we weren't quite meeting the mustard. But we knew that eventually the city would come back. And that's why it was implemented to begin with as a temporary tax. Everything that came out for streets prior to that was out of the general fund. Would be no different if we went ahead and eliminated this and started up when we truly needed it. You think about 1918, World War I. They went ahead and hiked up income tax because they needed to pay for World War I. After that, they went ahead and put it back down again. There is no reason why we should have a tax in here when we are fully capable of sustaining all of our services with what we have in our budget. And looking at what we just got through having here for citizens' comment, that is so sad. All of us that are approaching 65 are looking at fixed incomes. Electricity hits you where it hurts. You need to heat your house and put your lights on. There's no reason why we should have that in the city of Liberty Lake, that we are doing so well when we sat with $5.5 million in excess last year. That's what we're spending to be able to take care of some of these things. But if you plan for it, that's where it comes in. I'm pleading with this council as one that wasn't there July 5th to bring in my history. We don't need this utility tax. Have it on board if we need it in the future, but there's no reason to continue it as a tax for perpetuity.
Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Van Orman had to say. And the first name that I wrote down when we were discussing this was Tim as well, because that to me is who it impacts the most. And while I think seniors on a fixed income, obviously it's going to impact them, it's also going to impact working families that are dealing with huge inflationary pressures right now. As I mentioned, when we first discussed this, I think it was July, or was it June?
July.
Yeah. To me, I think it is critical to go back to what this council, not all of us sitting on the council, but the previous council and the city said and promised, and that was it was going to be a temporary fix. And here we are 10 years later, and a temporary has become permanent. If we're going to consider a way to fund the roads separate from the general fund budget, I think we ought to have that conversation with the community. But for the sake of the utility tax, we promised that this was going to be temporary. And so my feeling is that we should follow through on that promise. The caveat to that obviously is something that the mayor has pointed out, and I think is a decent point, that a lot of the companies and businesses that are opening up here, they don't necessarily pay for the roads in any way if we don't have this utility tax in place. So I'm not sure if there's a way to split that and make it so that we just remove it for residences. Maybe Kyle knows the answer to that question, but before I ask it, Kyle, I think if we are not going to fully remove it, we should remove it on the things that are necessities of life. And that is electric, natural gas, and maybe obviously garbage too. To me, if you have cable TV and a telephone, that shows you can afford those two luxury. Those are luxuries. Those are not necessities. And so if there's any discussion about us keeping it in place, my position is that we remove it on electric and natural gas for the sake of those people who are on a fixed income and others, and not necessarily just on telephone and cable TV. But thank you. Kyle, I guess, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was gonna let Kyle
Yeah,
jump in there and I just
absolutely.
rattled on. I apologize.
Go ahead, Kyle.
So the legwork I've done so far, and I will continue to do this and get clarity, is I haven't found a mechanism to separate business and residential for utility tax yet.
Thank you.
And I just a couple, and thanks for bringing up Councilmember Cargill about, we do have these big vehicles that are coming in, and yeah, they pay into the mitigation fund when they build their location, but not for the ongoing maintenance. We've got RVs, we've got the heavy equipment, we've got including Western States Cat, we've got Peterbilt, we've got Huntwood, and I love looking at the usage part of the tab tax, but that still doesn't put the burden on those companies because they're not necessarily registering all those vehicles when they're on their lots, or they're coming in and going out, and we don't see anything. I will also point out, and it's probably something we need to review because it's been a while since it was put in place, is the rebate program that is available for seniors, disabled, low income people. There's not a lot of people who apply for that. I know one of them is on line with us now. He may have been the only one over the years who was submitting that. A little bit of an exaggeration, but I do know we need to do a better job in getting that word out about citizens being able to get that rebate on those taxes. And then just a third point to Councilmember Van Orman's statement about having excess of 5.5 million. Well, most of that is because we reduced our spending during COVID and we had record revenues. It wasn't because we were we weren't intentionally trying to get this excess. Now we're spending it. We would have spent it if COVID hadn't come along. But now we're catching up with all those projects. So typically in the past, we've had, Kyle, remind me, I know you ran the numbers, 3.3 to 3.6 million at the beginning and ending fund balances for the general fund. I think
Generally, then we've dipped down into 2.8 before, as recently as a couple of years ago. But yeah, generally, you're correct.
yeah, so 5.5 excess is unusual, and
Yeah.
that's not what we strive for. And I said those funds were accumulated over a couple of years of savings and unexpected revenues. Just a couple points for everybody to keep in mind. Councilmember Kurtz?
I apologize. I don't, Kyle, have your number of the revenue from all the taxes together for this last year. Do you happen to have that number?
It's right at 850,000.
Can somebody,
850 to 860.
can somebody do some quick math for me?
Don't let Phil do it.
Not Phil. The 800, that number divided by the approximate residents of the city of Liberty Lake to find out what that would be per resident per year.
It's gonna be less than $10.
Yeah, because we got the businesses and everything to do it.
I just want to hear it out loud.
It's about $71
Okay, so over the course of 12 months,
per person.
it's maybe a coffee a month-ish about. And I think that was sort of the number that I was going off of last time we had this discussion. I think one of the things that I'm struggling with I hear the concern about inflation and how much things are costing everybody. But I don't know that removing this tax and then putting in another one solves the problem for anybody. And I still don't think, and what I said at the meeting in July was that I'm not willing to consider this unless we actually have a plan to fund the streets the way we do now. And we still do not have that plan. We're still throwing around some ideas. And so I think that this discussion on removing it is premature until we come up with a plan to fully fund the roads. One of the phrases that we hear, and one of the anecdotal pieces that came off of even the community page survey was that roads are a priority for the citizens, and they are one of our core functions of government. And I want to make sure that we have a good plan for them. So I don't know that for $70 a year, this is the bang for the buck that everybody's hoping for. I think that there are other ways that we could consider reducing taxes that would have a more equitable impact across not only our business owners, but the people who use our roads. And so if there's a way to have that conversation, I would really like to do that sometime in the near future so that we can figure out if this is the solution for moving the utility tax, or if there's something else that we haven't thought of that might be a better solution.
And remember too, that, we can change the utility tax at any time. It just requires Kyle, once that's voted on by the council, whatever we do with it, it takes effect 60
days, I think
60
it's
days.
60 days.
Yep.
There needs to be time to notify those utilities and whatnot. So it is something that can be done at another time in the year too. So keep that in mind. Councilmember Van Orman, I think you had your hand up again.
I did. I just wanted to go ahead and reiterate the fact that streamlined sales tax, we got lucky. Here we've got RVs, cars, that in most instances, the sales tax would go to wherever the person lives. And with cars and RVs, it stays here. So that's my 2 points, and thanks for listening.
Sure. All right, we haven't heard from Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Spencer, Councilmember Solberg. Oh, wait, I got you up, Tom, sorry. Councilmember Spencer, anything?
I think just a couple of points I'd like to make. As we look at all the other municipalities, pretty much everybody is maxing out what they can collect for utility tax. We're at half of that. We're using the money to go towards roads. I feel like that's an appropriate use. I feel like if we can justify removing that and paying for all those services that we're currently paying for out of the general fund, I think that's something we should look at. But again, I do feel like, taking care of the roads is a core function of government. What I find unfortunate, and I don't want to sound preachy here or political, but if you look at your taxes, your property taxes, utility taxes are not what's killing homeowners. It's everybody voting every time there's a bond or a levy, putting the thumbs up and realizing how that's going to affect your taxes. That's what's killing you.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you, Mayor.
welcome.
I've been waiting patiently. I totally agree with what you just said. In my mind, and I can appreciate the citizen comment tonight about the appraised values going the direction they are, which is directly affecting everybody's property tax. But this utility tax is not tied to that at all. It's based on a few things that we were on the chart: phone, waste management. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, natural gas, telephone, cable, TV, and garbage. So we generate $860,000 a year from this fund at 3%. And the question was asked earlier, what percentage of that comes from residences versus businesses? So I brought my bills from last month, and I can tell you exactly what I paid in utility tax, right? I have a Vista, and I have Verizon, and I have my Comcast bill, and I have my waste management bill right here, okay? So I didn't make a math mistake.
You didn't leave out a decimal?
Didn't leave out a decimal. I totaled it all up, and it's just shy of $27. It's $26.95 for 1 month for all of those. And I don't have, I spend money on my phone, and I have ESPN, and I have all that stuff. So it's not, they're not cheap bills is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so if you knock it down to 2%, then I would pay $18 a month. If you knock it down to 1%, I would pay $9 a month. So based on those numbers, and based on the 860,000, I have a suspicion, I have no way to prove it, but most of it comes from the businesses within the city. Is that a fair statement, or is that a fair assumption? How about that?
I would think it's a fair assumption. Kyle, I'll let you weigh in.
Yeah, I hesitate giving you definitives, but yes.
Well, I understand, but I'm just looking at what I'm paying a month.
Sure.
And so I guess the other part of the use of the funds that comes into play for me is we use these funds only for the streets. And when we do that, we're also opening ourselves up to matching funds from other resources, correct? that correct?
Yes.
Yep. So I'm hesitant to whittle back on this. I know we could pull the funds maybe from somewhere else for matching, but for me, I like the fact that it all goes to streets and nowhere else. I'm not crazy about the golf cart tab idea. I'm having flashbacks from the state years ago.
Car tab.
Car tabs, yeah. So I don't know if golf cart tabs are the way to go. So does that help identify maybe what a resident pays in relationship to a Huntwood, for example? I can't imagine what their power bill is. Right? So I would just ask that we really think hard on this before we start making gear shifts.
And that was one of the major differences when when the rate was reduced from 6 to 3, that's when it was pegged to the streets. And there was even a community and business group that got together when the 6% was put in, and, and Huntwood was, one of the ones leading the charge. It really hurt them bad at first, but once it was reduced to 3% and it had a specific purpose, that seemed to resonate more with the businesses who were impacted. And honestly, I remember, I was there when the 6% was put on, and honestly, I don't think we had one discussion about how it would impact the businesses. We were just thinking about the residences. So, to reduce it by half and put it for a specific purpose, I think was the right move back then. Just from history perspective for me. Did we have another comment? Councilman Cargill?
No, and I appreciate it. And look, the $25 a month or whatever it is for my bill or Councilmember Foyer's bill. Yeah, that's not a lot to us, but to some people it is a lot. Some people it is a lot. It's kind of like the analogy of a person who has a backpack on and you put one rock in there. Oh, it's not very much, oh, let's just put a few more rocks in there. Oh, it's not very much. Let's put 40 rocks in there. It starts to add up for people. And so that's the way I feel about this, is that it may not be a ton for those of us sitting on this dais, and it may not be a ton for people listening in the audience, but for some people, it might be the difference. It might be. Who are we to say whether it's the difference or not? And again, I just want to make it clear that if we don't do anything with this, we are essentially saying to the citizens that the city is breaking its promise, the promise that it made to make this temporary. I would prefer to see it at least suspended while we come up with a different solution. And then we go back to the community and say, we followed through on the promise that we made you. It was temporary. Now we're considering option A, or whatever the option is going to be, if the concern is that we need more money for the roads. But to me, a promise is a promise, and I don't think we should break it. Thank you.
Councilmember Spencer.
I would just want to add to my earlier comments that if there are people struggling in our community with this, that by all means, I think we should be able to figure out a way. If the majority of these funds are coming from businesses and we have citizens in our community that need that assistance, I think we should make that available. And so it sounds like we already have something in place for certain individuals. Is it based on age, or is it based on income, or both?
I
think it's both.
Yeah,
I think it's both.
elderly, low income, disabled.
And I would be
variations thereof.
curious to find out if there is a number, if we could come up with some sort of estimate that if we removed all of those families and those individuals from the equation, what difference is that going to make? I suspect it's not going to be a massive amount to the budget. As far as making the promise to the community, I think there is some merit to that. I don't know whether it was necessarily appropriate to say we're only going to do this for a period of time. I think by cutting it in half the year after they implemented it, in some ways makes good on that promise. Again, I'm not for taxing everybody to death, but as of right now, the way it looks like it's serving a purpose for our community, and everybody is enjoying the fruits of that allocation.
Can I have one comment?
Sure, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
As you talk about the promise, I guess I think about the time frame that it's been at 3%, which is close to 12 years. And that's many different people sitting in this room. And nobody has changed it all those years. And my assumption would be because of what they're using the funds for. Directly for streets. There's been many opportunities to make a change on this, and I don't know this, you've been on part of this a long time, Mayor. Does it come up every year?
It's part of the ordinance that we will review
Right.
it every year, and we do that as part of the budget process.
Right, so there's been a reason this council or the previous 10, 12 years councils haven't changed it. So there's two sides to every story, I guess is what my point is.
All right, so, so obviously this is just a workshop. I guess the next question is, what would the council like to see the next step be? I know we've got obviously quite a few varying opinions. So I'm not quite sure what the next step is.
I'll make a comment if I
Sure.
can. I really like your idea, Jed. Maybe it's beefing up that program. Maybe it's advertising it better.
Mhm.
Maybe it's taking care of the folks that need the help. Instead of just slashing across the board.
I already made a note. So Kyle, we can talk about it in the director's meeting tomorrow, but if we can take a look from the staff side, first take a look at that ordinance and bring it back.
I will just say, you know, I appreciate that program as well, but I do think there's a little bit of pride associated with this issue. I mean, if someone can't pay their bill, it's difficult for them to sign up for a program to say they can't pay their bill. And so I think we ought to take that into consideration. And, you know, it's easy again for us to say, hey, you know, if you come down to City Hall or if you fill out this form and send it to us, we'll waive it for you. But there's a pride issue with it too, that a lot of people don't want to have to do that. Don't want to have to admit they can't pay their bill. So I think we should keep that in mind. Thank you.
Noted. All right, so I guess our next step would be, we'll take a review at the staff level of that ordinance, and then we can bring that back up. And I said, this decision doesn't necessarily have to be made, you know, before the end of the year and before the budget is approved. We can continue the discussion, just depends on where it goes. Councilmember Spencer.
Just again, to reiterate, if there's a way that we can estimate for those 65 plus in our community and you know, at a bare minimum, and determine what that amount is. And if we determine that that's not going to be a significant, you know, amount to the budget or whatever it is we decide as a council, we could just make that a blanket thing. So they don't have to come down and, you know, fill out a form. I don't know how you would address the low income side of things. But again, I just want to go back to the fact that we have this list of all of the municipalities in the state of Washington. We are by far the lowest on all utilities. And the fact that, and this was news to me, that the water and sewer has no cap, and there are some municipalities taking up to 30% on top of 6% across the board for everything else. That when we make that comparison, I feel like we're being very responsible when it comes to, you know, how much we're charging. So those are my comments.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, we don't charge any of that with Water and Sewer District being its own entity, and I think that's a huge bonus. I know what a big deal the water and sewer tax in Spokane has been over the years, so. Go ahead, Councilmember Kurtz, and then Councilmember Cargill.
On the same line as Councilmember Spencer, I think one of the other things that we do very well in Liberty Lake is having a low property tax, even though the assessed values are high. I think that part of that is because this is a beautiful place to live. And people recognize that value intrinsically and extrinsically. Is that a word? Extrinsically. And so I think people really want to live here. But I think that we have low utility taxes. We have low property taxes themselves. Even though the bill itself is high, I don't know that we have a ton of control over all of that because we aren't.
Yeah, it's a county.
It's a county. Yeah. But I want what I want. I feel like the city is being responsible with the money that we do have. We are investing in our community, which is again, part of the reason why people want to live here. And so I think that keeping the taxes low is important. but being responsible with how the decisions we make here is important as well.
Councilmember Cargill.
Can I just ask again for clarification from Kyle? Is there a way to separate it, Kyle? Because it seems like that's something that's kind of the consensus that's emerging here, is that if we could figure out a way to separate it, either among low income or business or whatever, then that might be a way to go about coming up with a solution. But from the answer you gave earlier, it sounded like really we couldn't do that.
No, there isn't a mechanism that I have found, and so I will continue that search. I'm gonna say there isn't, but that's not gonna stop me from continue my search. But the utility tax rebate program does, it identifies that on a, application basis, so we can carve those out that come to us. And so that's a mechanism by which we can do that. I haven't found a mechanism to do that on a large scale.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and just a side note, so part of the legislative priority list from Greater Spokane Valley Chamber is talking with the legislature about exempting the first $250,000 of a property value. So write your legislators in support of that. Write your county, right, whoever. When that list is final, I'll get, like I said, I'll get that to you. And that's another way we can attack this. Get the word out to our residents to send their letters in and testify. They allow remote testimony now, and seems like that's going to stay. It doesn't take long. So just publicizing this stuff as much as possible is very helpful.
Two more comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Something Jed just said sparked a thought. Among other cities, we're 6%.
Pretty much everybody's maxing out
Max
at
out.
6.
And we're at 3%. And it may be because of our stance on that is why we're attracting bigger businesses to the city. Probably. So they came here for a reason, and we're all appreciative of that, and we all support the local businesses. But I don't know, I just don't know that we really need to adjust this when in the survey earlier, streets was the #1 thing for our citizens. And if the bulk of it is coming from the businesses, then I don't say we change it, but that's just me. And one other thought, as far as the program that we were talking about, I heard assistance or I guess in my mind, I'm looking at what's the savings on the tax, not the bill itself.
Right.
So I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
we're all
if I remember
thinking the
right,
same way on that.
Kyle, it's 100% rebate on the
Yeah,
tax.
It's 100%. So they are paying their utility tax. We are refunding what they have paid
Like on a
based on criteria that they
on a yearly basis or something.
How often do people usually do it by quarter, by month, or how do they usually do it, Kyle?
So I suppose it depends on when we receive their information. So it's probably as those interactions take place.
Yeah, it's not for a prescribed amount of time.
I just wanted to be clear. It's the tax itself.
Yes.
It's not the bill.
Correct.
Correct.
You're $26.
My $26. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you. I agree completely on the whole issue about the other cities and what they're charging compared to what we're charging. We're charging a lot less. The one asterisk on that is our next door neighbor, City of Spokane Valley, which is charging 0. The only thing that they're charging on is telephone at 6%. Everything else is 0. So, when I look at this from the business side, I'm thinking, what is our competitive advantage over the City of Spokane Valley if we're charging 3 on everything and they're just charging 6 on one item?
Because they're probably only using the one item. Power.
No, it's
telephone.
Telephone.
Oh, it's on, oh, it's on phone.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been a major topic for them
Yeah.
for a while now, and there's a lot more behind that.
Sorry, not following them real close.
All right, so if there are no other comments, Councilmember Solberg, you've been kind of quiet. Do you have anything to add? Nope. Okay, thanks. All right, so we'll move into the consent agenda, general business.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Make a motion to approve general business 10A, B, and C as amended from earlier. Item 10A, approve the October 4th, 2022 city council meeting minutes as amended. Approve the October 11th, 2022 special meeting minutes. And approve the October 18th, 2022 vouchers, October 4th and 11th, 2022 manual checks, and September payroll and benefits in the amount $1,159,834.34.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Cargill. Any discussion? All right, not seeing any. All right, we've got a first from Mayor Pro Tem, second from Councilmember Cargill. We'll go ahead to our vote cast. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda, items A, B, and C, please indicate your vote. And we've got an aye from Councilmember Solberg.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, we got 6-0. So motion passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you.
I just want to comment. We don't
Yes.
have any general business items tonight.
That's awesome. All right, so we are to council comments. Any additional comments from the council, not regarding future meetings? We get to that later. Not seeing or hearing any. We'll move on to public hearings and appeals. We have the public hearing for sources of revenue for the 2023 budget. We'll turn it over to Kyle, and then we'll start the public hearing after he does his presentation.
All right, thanks again, Mayor, Council. So this is a good lead in. Some of the discussion on the utility tax does lead into what we're going to talk about here and get into as a presentation portion of our public hearing tonight regarding sources of revenue for 2023. So we'll get into it. Next slide, please, Todd. So we'll discuss major revenue streams, and we do this annually to identify for council and the public what our major revenue drivers are and what our outlook is for the following year. And so obviously our major revenue source is sales and use tax. And so we budgeted in 2023 $5.1 million in revenue for that revenue stream. We're projecting 5.4 million. We always want to be a tad conservative when we're projecting those out, because of what we discussed earlier, potentials in any economic downturn and just not being overly aggressive with those when you're tying those to certain operations. So that's the rationale for 5.1 instead of 5.4, or let's say 6 million if we think we're going to continue to grow. And so on the permits and planning side, we budgeted 1.1 million. This revenue includes building permits, franchise fees, business licenses, and so we're on pace in 2022, as I've discussed many times before. We're on pace for 1.5 million, which is an astounding number for what the planning staff is churning through really on a weekly basis. And so they funds all of their own activities, and it's a credible mechanism by which we're charging fees that really match what that cost is. And so obviously that includes permit reviews, inspections, project management, professional services, things of that nature. Next slide, please, Todd. Real estate excise tax, we've touched on that a couple of times over the last few months. 2023, we're budgeting 1.2 million. We're on pace for 1.5 this year. This is a little bit more of an elastic source of revenue, and it really can kind of mirror what's going on regionally in terms of the housing market and commercial activity within the city. And so as you can see, the rate is a 1/4% of the sale of real property within the city. And so cities that are planning under the Growth Management Act can levy a second 1/4% for additional capital facilities improvements. And so obviously these funds are targeted towards capital improvements that are listed on the capital facilities plan. So we touched on utility tax. I'll skip over that. Obviously that funds street operations. So golf operations 2023 budgeted 1.4 million. That does include beginning balances because we are going to throw everything at both operations and trailhead facility loan repayment to the greatest extent possible. Next slide, please. And so the major source of the discussion tonight revolves around property tax and what the city's options are regarding increasing property tax, maintaining status quo, And that means a couple different things. So what we have proposed, what the mayor has proposed in the 2023 budget is a 0% property tax for 2020, increase for 2023. Last year's actual levy was 2.93 million. If we want to take the 1%, that is a councilmatic action to do so. And so we can increase that dollar amount by $29,271 if council so chooses. We also have items that add to our property tax that are irrespective of your normal levy, your assessed value per $1,000 essentially. So that's called new construction credit. So you're getting new construction on the tax rolls and you're accounting for that in addition to your base property tax amount. We anticipate that to be roughly 150,000 new construction that we anticipate to see for 2023. 2023 Liberty Lake levy rate is estimated. I do say estimated because final numbers are not in yet. Is to be $1.06 per $1,000 of assessed value. The 2022 rate was $1.26 per $1,000 of assessed value. So while you do see these assessed values climbing up, if the city takes a 0% property tax, our amount is going to stay at that $2.93 million base. And so we're not collecting any additional based on increases in assessed value. And in 2021, I want to say our dollar per 1,000 was I think it was $1.35 per $1,000 of assessed value. So you can see this as you see assessed values start climbing, you see this rate per $1,000 of assessed value continue to fall because we are not taking that 1%. We have our base, and then we have what new construction credit is added on to that. And that encompasses any growth that we see in property tax. And so for a snapshot, if a property within the city was assessed with an assessed value of $500,000, annual property tax for Liberty Lake purposes would be $530. Next slide, please, Todd. Thank you. What does our property tax cover? Liberty Lake property tax funds library services and public safety. Those are the two services that are earmarked for those funds. And so one of the things that we'll have in November is an ordinance that we'll have to pass, irrespective of it's going to be 0% or 1% property tax increase. We'll put that forward for council consideration. We'll put forward the 0% property tax unless we hear different, because that is what is in the mayor's budget. And that'll be up for council consideration in November.
Kyle, before you go on, two quick things. We do have in that ordinance, with electing the 0%, we are opting, we have in there to opt to bank.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, and then on the previous bullet, Liberty Lake property taxes fund library services and public safety. It's actually 54% of public safety based on last year's numbers. So they don't fully fund the library and PD.
Correct. Yeah, sorry, a portion of those services, and that's earmarked for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the rest of that funding comes from general fund.
Yeah, so sales and use and state share revenues, things of that nature. Thank you for the clarification, Mayor. Next slide, please, Tom. So this is a snapshot of how Liberty Lake compares with other local municipalities in terms of amount per $1,000 of assessed value. So you see we have Cheney, Airway Heights, City of Spokane, City of Millwood, of Spokane County in general, and the Spokane Valley. And so we'll take your eyes to, I think it's a source of pride with the city, and it has been historically, is, what is the tax rate that is inside the city's control? And so in 2022 is $1.26 per $1,000. You can see we match up fairly well with our counterparts. And what you're going to see in 2023 is you're going to see these all come down to a certain extent. But what you can see for 2023 Liberty Lake estimate is that $1.06 per $1,000 of assessed value. And what that ratio is for the other cities, I'm unsure at this point what that looks like. And so you can take a look at what is outside the city's control. So you have obviously fire and EMS services. You have a number of school sponsored bonds and levies. So you have your state levy, And then you have a couple, you have your school district capital, and then you have the SD 360 is another school related bond or levy rate, I should say. And then you'll see county general on there that is across the board that's levied for the entire, Spokane County. And so what you see at the very bottom there is Liberty Lake and all of these other municipalities, but it's also encompasses everything else that you see on your property tax statement and what is inside Liberty Lake's control and what is not. And with that, I'll take any questions. But we will obviously continue those discussions as we, get into the meat of the revenue and some of those further expenditure discussions. But that's a snapshot of what we're expecting for 2023 in terms of major revenue sources.
Great, thanks. We'll take council questions and then we'll do the public hearing. So Councilmember Van Orman.
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, can you talk a little bit about us banking that amount that we're not taking?
Yes.
And any other jurisdiction from, say, doing a levy lift?
So it does. So that is ours specifically. And so the county's assessor's office tracks what our banked capacity is. So if we bank, let's say we bank that capacity, if we need that revenue in the future, we can capture that in a subsequent ordinance stating that we accept our 1% lawful amount in addition to this specified amount of bank capacity that we had not taken in prior years. So you can see we have $29,000 if the city elects not to take it for 2023. We're essentially banking that capacity by calling it out in the ordinance. We're saying we're accepting a 0% property tax increase, but we're still identifying there is this amount that we're choosing not to take. The assessor's office tracks what that bank capacity is, and we can ask for that later if needed.
Up to a certain, there's a cap of what, 3%?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Councilmember Cargill.
Thanks, Mayor. Kyle, a couple of questions. One, I'm not sure if we can put it back up on the screen. We had the review of all the different cities at the very end there, the last one, Todd. Is there a way to get back up? I think it was the very last slide.
Very last slide, yeah.
There you go.
Kyle, I just want to make sure I understand. Obviously, the fire district and God bless them, they're going to be putting out a levy. Isn't it this year? It's this November, right? Or is it next?
I think it's February.
February? Okay. That increases their rate pretty dramatically. Is that accounted for in this comparison?
It is not, no.
Okay, so this is what it would be under the current rates.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Just to make sure I understand what you were mentioning earlier, the property tax brings in 2.93.
Correct.
2.93 million. Okay. So we were just, obviously we just had this 45-minute discussion about the utility tax. And it occurs to me that that's about $1 million as well. Is there a way, and maybe I'm looking at the mayor as well, that we can somehow put that reduction that we were talking about, or the help that we were talking about, into the property tax reduction as opposed to the utility tax? So we still keep the utility tax where it's at, if that's the preference of the council, but we talk about a property tax reduction, somewhat similar to what Annie was talking about, trying to get it more broad and help more people. I'm not sure if she was talking about property tax, but she had mentioned just looking at other tax rates as a whole. Is that something that's doable?
I have to defer to Kyle on that.
So I believe there is a mechanism to do that. What you start running into is what you are allowed to levy going forward. And so the only thing I would caution against is the second that you start reducing that tax, you're still only able to make up that 1% chunk, assuming you're not, and there's a max that you can bank. And so what you're doing is you run the risk of falling behind even more, because we all know inflation rises at a rate higher than 1%. So if you start compounding your 1% against, 6, 7, 8%, and then you're further reducing that, you're falling further behind in your property tax. And what you end up doing is when you actually really do need that revenue, you are asking the residents to lift the lid on your own levy.
Right.
You fall too far behind.
Yeah, I guess my question and how I'm trying to think through this, can you bank up to the 3 while reducing at the same time?
I would need to get some more information on that to answer that definitively.
Okay.
But I will look into that and I will get back to you.
Okay.
Or the council. Yeah.
You can only bank a percent.
Right.
And if you wanted to bank 3 years in a row, you could go back and then get 3%.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't go get the 3%. That's for over the course of a 3-year period where you're banking 1%.
Right.
The most you can bank is the 1%.
Right, exactly. 1% per year, but
Right.
we could come back next year and say we banked a total of 3 over the past 3 years, right? That's the max we can do. And then we could bank it all at once if we ran into a situation, correct?
You could keep banking every year.
Right.
If you wanted to.
Right, you just can't do
go-
more
if
than
You did
3.
it 6 years in a row, you can't go get 6.
Yeah, exactly. We could do, the max is
You
3.
could do 3.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay, I think I saw another hand up. Who was it? Nobody?
I have one
Okay,
simple
go ahead.
question. How many years have we been at 0?
This is the second year in a row.
Before that, what was the history
I
of the
think it
council?
was- Oh, I had it somewhere. I think it
There's,
was
I mean, it's a handful maybe.
sporadically.
Sporadically, the council hasn't done the 1%.
No, sporadic, yeah, that's sporadic.
Yeah.
It's maybe less than another 3 years. over the
I'd say it's probably a
21 years.
handful in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And
The first 10, it was 0.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm assuming there were specific reasons in those specific years. Since I've been here, I think it's been COVID related was the discussion. If I'm right. So I guess I'm looking for some history of council action on.
I've got it somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
It's all by either it's always been done either by resolution or ordinance, so
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
have it in by the end of November. From the standpoint of what the city's gonna do, so it's all, there's all records for it.
And in the past, I've been in the audience and I've heard this argument and understand it, but it's just an argument. It's one side of the story. It's, you can only bank 3 years, like you were talking, so you kind of technically lose out on the recurring. So if you do the 1%, you continually do the 1%, you're compounding on the 1%. If you bank the 1%, it's only that amount.
Right.
You're not compounding.
Yeah.
Correct.
To keep up with the cost of doing business and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that part of the equation too. So
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, there you have no more comments by council. We'll go ahead. and
Oh,
op-
can I say, I'm sorry. On this chart, as I'm looking at it, Kyle, the number at the bottom, that is the outside cities control number. The total tax rate is combined, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Is for anybody that's out there watching. So when you look at we're currently paying 1.2617, that's the city's portion. The balance goes to other locations, other services.
Right.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so no further questions. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 9:16 PM. So if there's anybody in the audience here who'd like to speak at this time about the property tax rate, that's the only topic for this one. Or if there's anybody in our viewing audience on Zoom who would like to make a public comment on Zoom, just go ahead and send a note to Todd Henderson, your meeting manager. He'll let me know. And if there's anybody here in the audience who'd like to make a comment, we will take it as well. Not seeing anybody jumping up and down. Would you like to make another comment, Tim? Sure, absolutely. We'll get you back up here at the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes again.
I won't take 3 minutes.
Well, you can have it if you want.
In my previous working career, I probably would have took an hour, but the one thing I'm glad I came because when I ask questions and people say 0 rate, okay, I was never explained that the 0 rate means that the mill rate drops. And that was what was really in my mind. Because I could see 40% of your revenue going up without even doing anything. But when you explain that the zero rate, it keeps dropping.
As long as we're growing.
As long as you're growing, it keeps dropping because you're keeping a tax amount and dividing it by the assessed value. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay. Because then my fixed income is not being adjusted by 20% of taxes. So I take that back. And I do agree with this councilman over here, Spencer. Okay. I think that fire department thing went through this spring.
There's another one.
Oh, there's another one? Okay, because that one I looked at and I go, I can't believe people are doing this because yeah, they had 44% increase in services of calls. Well, when you go from 3 calls a day to 5, I don't think that justifies a 50% increase. And that's just my saying. Now, their services is great, but I don't think it deserves that. And thank you, council, for letting me talk. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
And I
Yeah.
appreciate the clarity. Okay?
Property tax math can be kind of confusing.
Very confusing, and even though math was my major, one of my majors, it's still confusing.
Thank you. Todd, do we have anybody on Zoom who would like to weigh in on property tax? Nope. All right. Well, not seeing any more, we will go ahead and close the public hearing at 9:19 PM. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right. So we have no resolution. We do have first read ordinance. No, wait, where am I? Yes, first read ordinance, number 288, Kelsey.
Ordinance number 288 is an ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, granting the right of franchise to Avista Corporation, DBA Avista Utilities, a Washington corporation, for the operation of a natural gas distribution system in the City of Liberty Lake.
Okay, right, so it's first read. If there's any questions or comments, we'll take those. We'll have the second read at the next regular meeting. All right, all good? All right, so we will move on. We don't have any emergency ordinances. Introduction of upcoming agenda items. I think I buried my paper here. Okay, so obviously, we all know it's all about budget. So we've got the October 25th meeting starting at 7, November 15th, we've got the annual comp plan code amendment. And then we've got our TBDs, budget and capital facilities plan that's kind of ongoing. We do have a meeting. Is it this week, Mark, on the camping ordinances?
It's the 24th.
Okay, I couldn't remember. So that we have a staff level meeting on that. And then, so once we have that, then we'll set something on the agenda to go over those updates to camping ordinances, community engagement with regards to the budget. So Councilmember Cargo, I know we keep moving this out. So I think we have a spot probably on the first meeting in November for that. A workshop, short workshop on that. Okay.
Be great. Thank you.
11. It's 11:1, I think. Kyle, I'll just leave it up to you with regards to financial policy states. I know you've been working on it, but then obviously the budget takes precedence. And then we're trying to re-kick off the discussions with regards to the Selkirk Middle School to Hub Trail. We kind of did an update on that at the Council of Community Valley Chamber Government Action Committee on Monday, kind of gave the new history to the new superintendent. And so it's really in the court between the county and the school still. So we'll just update on that. Is there anything anybody wants to add to our future workshops? Well, obviously we'll put on the rebate program that we talked about. Let's see what else I have in my notes here. Yeah, go ahead, Kelsey.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we add a review of the library ordinance that we discussed
Sure.
earlier?
Hold on, let me write that down first. All right, go ahead.
I know that the library ordinance and books and everything with. But I think if we're going to review one ordinance for one commission, we should review them all. Because if we're concerned about power and control of the council, maybe we should assess that across all of our commissions. I think that at this point, I wouldn't support adding it to the agenda because I feel like we have people to have the ability to confirm them. We have that power to that. But if we were going to look at one, I think it's only fair to look at them all.
Okay. Yeah, and the other ones are fairly simple. I keep copies of them at my desk to review on a regular basis, so we'll put that on upcoming. Anybody else for any upcoming items? Councilmember Van Orman.
I realize, thank you, Mayor. I realize that we have, in our budget, or at least we did in past budgets, an opportunity to have a newsletter. And I also realize that we are all pretty much up for election. But I think it's high time that we kind of highlight the city of Liberty Lake and let the community know exactly, now that we have a community engagement commission, to start highlighting some of those things back to the community.
Okay, we can talk about that. You know, we pay for a page in the Splash every month for some of that. And, you know, there's some additional things that we're talking about for 2023 coming out of David's old one-man department, but he's small and mighty with a commission behind him. So we can add that to the discussion on what the additional things are we're looking at for 23.
Sounds right.
All right, anybody else? All right, so I'm not hearing anything else for upcoming agenda items. We are back to citizen comments. Just one more chance for anybody. What? Oh, was it? For anybody to comment on any other topic that you'd like us to hear about. So again, if anybody in the chambers, just go ahead and fill out your paper, raise your hand and run on up to the mic. And if there's anybody else on Zoom, just send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat. Todd, do we have anybody? Nope. Okay. All right. So not hearing any citizen comments, we will adjourn to executive session. What? Oh, okay. For what was the RCW? Oh,
Sorry.
RCW 423110II. 1I, sorry. So we need 10 minutes, let's say 15 by the time we all get in there. So we'll adjourn to executive session at 9:25. We'll come back. Yeah, 9:40. And there will be no decisions made in meeting. We will come out and adjourn. So feel free to stick around for the adjournment or go have a good night. Thanks, everybody. And Councilmember Sahlberg, we'll call you on your cell.
Thank you.
Executive session will be extended 3 more minutes until 9:43. Executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes to end at 9:48.
If there's no opposition, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Anybody opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 9:45.